Hello, hello. How's it going, folks? Good day, good afternoon, good morning. Hello, everyone. It's me, Rob Rousseau. How's everyone doing? How are you feeling? Hello, Dane. Hello, Dane. You like the new avatar? I don't know if it's a keeper or not. I don't know. I was talking about this yesterday. I don't know if I should. I feel like I need like a one that I just keep all the time. I can't settle on anything. I can't decide. I don't know. I just don't know. What are we talking about? Indeed. It's true. H-Bomber Guide this, H-Bomber Guide that, folks. This Oppenheimer Blu-ray DVD release guerrilla marketing campaign is everywhere I look. Not your best. Not your best, Marty. I think that needs a bit more time in the oven, in the kitchen. I came up with it while refilling my water. Well, that's nice. Good morning from the Borderlands. The new Javi is Trey Cool. Lodane says, I love it, but yes, consistent image is good. It does look like you. You're recognizable, and the most important part is that it's in color. Black and white avatars make you look offline. Well, that's good. I'll keep this one for a while, see how it goes. I'll see how she goes. I was also just watching a bit of that H-Bomber Guide video. It's so long. It's good when you have like 15, 20 minutes, like if I'm going to eat something or whatever, just to throw that on. Make my way through it. I don't know why I mean, it's very insular, you know? Obviously, he does make very engaging videos. It's entertaining. It's so insular, though. I think if you're not part of that YouTube world, it's very, like, impenetrable. It's definitely it's interesting to break down the way this kind of, like, theft works and plagiarism. It's all these YouTubers that I've never heard of before. I guess he's making a larger point about how this, like, on the low level, you can go all the way up to the way plagiarism works, like, on the mainstream level, I guess. Maybe it'll get to that point. It does feel like being led through a museum of drama, a little bit, yeah. It all sort of rolls off my smooth brain. I do have it's fine to watch, you know, I've been enjoying it. It's definitely interesting seeing the lengths people go to like disguise others' work, or building whole brands, basically just repeating verbatim stuff from a documentary. Or I was just watching the whole like Fire Festival thing. I guess sometimes I wonder, it's like, why do I care about this person? Why do I care whether this, like, it's not good, obviously. It's not that plagiarism is not a big deal, or it's not something important. I do kind of have this feeling of just like, what is this? Who are these people? Why am I watching a video about this like Nintendo Switch review guy who got fired from IGN? You know? Well, I'll keep watching that garbage. Yeah, I've never really. I mean, I've just like I said, I've never really been part of the whole like YouTube community. I don't really watch a lot of like YouTube content creators or any of that BreadTube type stuff. So I couldn't say. I mostly know him from Twitter. So couldn't say how his content has changed at all. He has retweeted me a bunch of times. I like that. That's good. I support that. I don't know. I've been watching the video. You know, it's good, I guess, to watch. I'm still doing it. Maybe it's just like, do I need to watch a 3-hour takedown of some of these people? There's very powerful people. There's very powerful people in the world that are getting away with a whole lot of like rampant corruption, criminality, theft, murder, really bad stuff, you know? So it's like I'm watching this video that's like epic takedown, detailed takedown of a guy in his like Switch reviews and Nintendo reviews. And it's like, okay, you know, sure. Yeah. All right. You're looking very powerful and slay today. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Goth Bimbo next door. I appreciate that. Blushing here. ContraPoints ended up doing girl boss interviews with Hillary and Chelsea. That's no good. That's no good. I honestly don't care enough about this topic to watch a 3-hour video. It is a really long-ass video to watch about this. Close to 4 hours. Like, yeah, it's a feature-length documentary. Folks, if I'm going to watch a 3-hour H-Bomber guy, it's going to be Oppenheimer. There we go, Marty. There you go. You got there. You got there. Excellent. it's fist bump for real. It's good to have on in the background while doing some menial task that I definitely don't do every day. Yeah, it's like I want to eat something. I like to have the TV on when I'm like eating something. Throw that on. It's not like an episode of Cheers or MASH or something where it's gonna. I have to watch the 25 minutes. You can watch it for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or whatever. Never raid Sean Vids. He doesn't raid. You gotta raid. You gotta raid. Not to take anyone's enjoyment of it away, but because everyone has their own type of entertainment that works for them. Boy, howdy, I cannot imagine putting 3 hours of my life towards some stoking hatred to some YouTuber I'd never heard of before. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I just don't know. Yeah, I think you're probably right, Barrier Trio. To give him some credit, I assume it's building to like a criticism of the systems that allow this sort of theft to thrive. For sure, in the whole like content creator economy, right? It's not even about plagiarism, but about like people, and I'm guilty of this as well. You get addicted to the feedback, you get addicted to the likes and retweets and comments and the praise and all that stuff. You get a little dopamine hit, and then you end up just trying to like recreate that. You're like chasing the dragon, you know? And that's something that I can learn from. And I think that's something that leads to a lot of this kind of like lazy infringement and plagiarism. Just people are just like, I got to churn out the content. I got to churn out content every single day. And then eventually you just give up trying to like create stuff, and eventually you're just trying to like doing whatever you can. To get that dopamine flood happening, you know? It doesn't help that YouTube values churning out bullshit rather than quality. Yeah, I mean, that's it. It rewards people for just like churning out shit every single day. And then I think when you try and do that, and you try and bring some kind of an original viewpoint or perspective to that, it's impossible to maintain. This is why I've never been able to take off on YouTube, because it's like I just don't have the fucking energy to continually be putting out content. I do it here, okay? This is the only place I'm able to do that. Because also when I do this show, I'm churning out content certainly every single day, but I'm not sitting down editing and trying to figure out an idea and writing a script or whatever. I just turn on a camera and a microphone and I just start talking and hanging out with people. That's how I'm able to do that. If I was like writing a script and editing this like little mini documentary every day, I would just lose my fucking mind. Nor does it help the companies, successful streamers, etc. also do it as part of why they're successful. Yeah, and Sean, I talked yesterday when this came up as well. It's like, we sit here on this channel and watch a lot of other people's content. We watch Breakthrough News, we watch Ben Norden, we watch Democracy Now!, like whatever it is. As I mentioned yesterday, when we do that, I, number one, give credit to the people that are creating the content. I link the videos so people can, I encourage people to support it. I don't just sit there and watch a 90-minute video and go, wow, that's crazy, like every 5 seconds. You know, we use it as jumping off points for larger discussions and different digressions and that kind of stuff. So I am definitely aware of that. That's something I think about and make sure that if we're going to do that kind of stuff, it's going to be... Chad, is this real? Yeah. If we're going to do that stuff, it's going to be above board, and the people that are working hard to create that kind of content at these different places are being, getting rewarded for that.
This is some guy, Rob Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Lucid Raid, hello. Hello, Lucid. Thanks so much for the raid. Welcome in, Raiders. Bring it in here. Hello, it's me, Rob. It's nice to see you. It's nice to have you. How's it going? How was the Lucid stream today? We were just discussing plagiarism and how we think it's good. Sometimes I like to just... Lucid doesn't know about this. You can count on me.
You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thanking me for this sub as the dopamine hit I chase every day.
Quaker Oats guy, thanks for 26 months of Tier 1. And that's beautiful because it's mutually reinforcing. I get a little hit of dopamine. You get one. It's nice, right? We're both benefiting. We were just watching a video about plagiarism. So Lucid doesn't know this, but sometimes I just put on Lucid's stream and I just put it on the screen. And I pass off all of Lucid's opinions and thoughts as my own.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I love this. Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Risk Inverse, thanks for the gifted sub. Sorry I'm late. I was getting a 3D printer from a pal. What are you 3D printing? What are we 3D printing over there? I have to go retrieve my poor car. Thanks again for the raid, Lucid. I hope the car is better. You 3D print that device, that contraption that killed Shinzo Abe. How about that? As a joke, though. Just as a joke. Just totally as a joke. I might print a friendship triangle. That's nice. That sounds nice. For collection purposes only. Exactly. Absolutely. I don't know if anyone's seen like my Twitter lately, but I did this tweet yesterday about this whole like narrative about organized roving Hamas rape gangs, and I described it as being out of the Colonialism 101 playbook. And I don't when those break containment, I never look at the replies. Like I only get replies from people that follow me on Twitter. So I just don't look at it. At last I checked, there's like 600 comments or something like that. Like people are probably saying all kinds of shit. People are probably saying all kinds of stuff. But I'm noticing that because I'm seeing some responses from people that follow me as they engage with the weirdos in the mentions. And it's really funny because people apparently are like, I don't want to look at it. I don't like looking at it. I take psychic damage when I look at all the nonsense. But I have people that are somehow suggesting that it's somehow hypocritical for me to talk about colonialism because I live in Canada and I'm a white man that lives in Canada. And someone said this to me yesterday, and the one thing that got through, and I was like, yeah, I know about colonialism because I live in Canada. Canada wrote the colonialism playbook. That's how I know about it. And people are trying to suggest like that it's somehow illegitimate for me to talk about settler colonialism in Israel because I live in a settler colonialist country. It would be hypocritical if you loved colonialism. That's right. If I didn't talk about this, I agree. Like, it's like, I think we should abolish Canada too. Like, what do you want from me? I think we should give land back here in Canada as well. And while, yeah, I live in Oklahoma. Let's fucking talk, bro. Exactly. And obviously Canada, as we've talked about a number of times, there's still an ongoing genocide happening in Canada against Indigenous peoples here in Canada. Canada is not currently at this time. We're doing a lot of horrible things when it comes to our Indigenous communities. We are not at this time, though, trapping people in a gigantic concentration camp and dropping thousands of bombs on it. You know? That's why I'm criticizing Israel right now. And I'm also criticizing Canada for our role in helping that, in giving them the diplomatic cover, sending them money and weapons. But that's why we're focusing on Israel right now, because they're the ones like doing this like open mass murder, ethnic cleansing, genocidal bombing campaign. That's why we're talking about it. You know, it's not really that hard to understand. This is the funny thing that I see all these people freaking out. They're really freaking out because they can't wrap their minds around this very, very simple to understand concept that I'm a person who lives in a settler colonialist country and I'm opposed to colonialism here in the United States, around the world, and in Israel. It's really, really not that difficult to understand. This is why I'm kind of chuckling. There's hundreds of people. They think that they've got me. They think they've got me in some kind of like a gotcha logical trap. They're like, we nailed this guy. It's the exact. I mean, it's the cousin of the argument about, oh, you criticize capitalism on your iPhone, sir. It's pretty much the same thing. Do you denounce Putin? Never. No. That's one of Canada's major and only culinary contributions. And yet you live in the empire. Curious. I know. It's like these people are really having a hard time understanding this. Yeah. It's just cheese fries with gravy. Well, no, that's not just cheese fries with gravy. Raven Payne 87. It's because it's cheese curds. It's got to have cheese curds. And yes, pineapple on pizza is also a Canadian thing, which is also something that I support. It's one of the best kinds of pizza. That's the official editorial line of this program. And I know that everyone that tunes into this show, viewers, listeners, chatters, all agree. All agree in the pineapple pizza supremacy. I know we're all on the same page about this, and I appreciate that. Thank you, Lodane. The curds are just cheese. They don't taste any different. You melt it, so it's not even in curd form anymore. No, I'm sorry. I disagree with that, Raven Payne. I disagree. They're only partially melted, first of all. And it just doesn't taste the same. It's not the same texture. It's not the same consistency. It's not the same taste. All right? Pineapple pizza in Pyongyang. That's the dream. No, you're wrong. Are we in a fight now? Raven Payne, are we in a fight? I didn't realize Poutines provenance was specifically Quebecois until I looked it up to make that condemn hummus joke. Well, that's the thing. It's been appropriated. It's been appropriated from the rest of the colonizer-brained citizens of Canada. It's become a Canadian thing, but really it's a Quebec thing. Yet again, Quebec's culture is being stolen and degraded by les maudits Anglais. Les maudits Anglais, les calistes colonizers, là. Ils volent toujours toute notre culture, toute notre tradition culinaire, artistique. Les sacrements de tête carrée, là. Fuck, I forgot I have a job interview in 15 minutes. Up the Reds, you gotta get on that. You gotta get in the mindset, in the mind frame. Good luck. You met Canadian bilingual quota. Move on, please. That's right. I hit my daily allotment. I'm actually forced, living in Quebec, I'm forced to speak a little bit of French every day. Or else I get kicked out. Anyway, I'm laughing at all the responses I'm getting to, and I don't read it, I don't look at it, but sometimes when I see a tweet escape containment like that, I just look and just like check in on the seeing the numbers just like going up in the comments without looking at anything. And people really think it's like a gotcha. They really think if you live in Canada or the United States, you can never talk about colonialism. $602 replies. I don't care. I don't care. I don't read it. And like I said, it's very easy to understand that you can live in a capitalist country and criticize capitalism. You can live in a settler colonialist country and criticize settler colonialism. I don't really see what's so difficult to understand about that. Like someone was saying, it would be hypocritical if I was like, I love Canada and think it's great and I support everything about it, but Israel's doing settler colonialism. That would, yeah, sure. That would be problematic. That would be hypocritical. The one guy telling you to go back to France is hilarious. I really identify more as Scottish, even though my name is French. If we gave land back to indigenous people in this country, and I hope that we do, and I'm going to continue advocating for that as long as I have a platform, I will continue advocating for us to give land back to indigenous people. If that day comes and we end settler colonialism in Canada, and indigenous people say like, hey, go back to Scotland. You're not wanted here. You're not welcome. Go back to Scotland. I'll go, okay, sure. No problem. I don't think that will happen. In the exact same way that I don't think if Palestine is freed, I think they just want to not to have genocide committed against them. And they want to have equal rights and equal treatment, and they want to all live together, in the same society, and not have a different set of rules, and not be kept in a concentration camp, not have bombs dropped on them, not have their kids kidnapped and beaten and murdered. I think that's exactly what Palestinian people want. And I think that's what most indigenous people want. I don't want to speak for indigenous people. But it's that exact mentality. Oh, if we give land back, they're going to make us leave. They're going to do genocide against us. They're going to do white genocide. With no actual evidence that that's actually what land back means at all. It is projecting, exactly. But again, if that's what was happened, and they said, listen, you're not welcome here anymore. You can go back to either Scotland or France. I go, okay, sure. No problem. People are very silly. People act very silly sometimes. You might be related to that too bad, lady. I hope so. I hope so. That'd be nice. Nikki, people are acting silly online. Can you imagine? Can you imagine people are like taking my words and giving it the least generous interpretation possible and attacking me over like things that they're making up in their minds? Can you imagine that happening on the internet of all places? If that happened, I'd have to go back to England, and that would actually qualify as a human rights crime. So, we wouldn't want that. Pretty sure Scots would beat your ass if you called them British. No, that's not what I was doing. I was talking to Blursid. Anyway, people being silly. You hate to see it. Luckily, no one in this community is silly. We have no silly people in here. Only very serious. Did someone say that, Raven? Oh my god. What did Canada colonize? That's good. That's good. What can you even say to that? Like, what's going on in our education system? Like, we teach about this shit. That's what makes our support for Israel all the more grotesque, because we actually, like, we do land acknowledgements, you know? We do teach about this shit. We just don't do anything about it. We teach about the history. We just suggest that the history is over and there's nothing we can do now. We do land acknowledgements. Our kids do Orange Shirt Day. That's why I think it's really hypocritical that we do these land acknowledgements and we talk about the mistakes of our past and the truth and walking the path of reconciliation and Orange Shirt Day and all this stuff. And then we support Israel fully while they're carrying out the same process, but like with even more brutality and barbarism. I feel like any normal person halfway through typing that would just be like, I don't know, let me look that up real quick. I don't know. It's like, what can you even do about that? What can you even do about it? This is why I don't read this shit. It would just give me brain. If all the stuff, like those 600 replies were all actually like appearing in my mentions on Twitter, I would just get brain damage from that, you know? Take care up the Reds. Good luck. Name one Canadian colony. Oh, man. It's okay, Diego. Like, again, I don't read it. I had someone a few moments ago being like, oh, I'm sorry all these people are in your mentions. It's like, I do not read it. I don't, like, give me 700 comments. Give me 800. Give me 1,000. Give me 2,000. I do not look at it. I don't read it. It doesn't affect me. I don't care. Does not affect me in the slightest. All it does is expose people for being fucking dumb. That's right, Moistel. That's the most I will ever do is that. I'll go into the reply. I'll reply maybe to one or two people. And then it's just like, goodbye now. Goodbye. Anyway, today I want to take a little bit more time to look at this, like the narrative yesterday that we were talking about. The narrative that all of a sudden Monday morning hits, the Monday morning news cycle hits as the violence has resumed. And it's just this I found so many examples. And it's so obviously coordinated of powerful people promoting this narrative about mass rape, Hamas rape gangs. I saw Electronic Intifada did a sort of whole segment on that, and I would like to watch that today. But everyone was getting involved. We got David Frum. When David Frum is saying this shit, notorious liar and propagandist and war criminal himself, David Frum, who has become a liberal hero now because he said Trump bad. No, everyone got the same memo, for sure. Absolutely. David Frum became a liberal hero because he said Trump bad. And he's out there saying this as well. It's so transparent. And Hillary Clinton as well. Fucking Hillary Clinton. Man, I gotta fix this. Get prepared for me. Prepare for me to be dark. Fix this shit. Okay. My camera goes back to its original settings, and then the auto exposure gets turned on, and then I get blurry. But then when I turn it off, I'm like, still a little blurry. I still don't understand this camera. It's actually really annoying. I have a really nice camera, and I still just can't get it to look right after 3 years. Fuck Dana Bash. Jayapal folded instead of pushing back. I mean, she did try to push back, but I think this is something that came up yesterday. When you're out there trying to condemn a genocide, you're trying to call for a ceasefire, you're condemning your government's role in promoting this violence. But then, like, in order to be taken seriously, you're like, of course Hamas are terrorists. Of course they are just these barbaric, violence-loving terrorists who just kill and for no reason at all. And of course we've got to condemn this. We've got to condemn everything you're asking me to condemn so I can make my argument. And then it's like sabotaging your own point. You know? You're sabotaging your own point when you do this. It's not even just about Israel, but about like any like argument about any like American intervention anywhere. Like Syria, for example. Of course Assad is bad, but I still don't think that we should be arming and funding these like Al-Qaeda guys to be fighting in a civil war in Syria, which has nothing to do with us, has nothing to do with me. But when you repeat these claims, of course Assad is a violent, genocidal, child murdering war criminal, but it's like, well, so your point is that these people are horrible and bad and violent murderers, but you propose doing nothing, you know? Yes, of course I agree. These people are brutal rapists and murderers, but I support doing nothing against that. You know, it's not really like a coherent argument. That's why I think it's really important to just refuse to be swayed by these kinds of like, this kind of browbeating. You know, that's why, and like I try to give credit where it's due. Pramila Jayapal's trying to work within the position that she's in, which is an actual position that has some influence in the United States government, to try and advocate for something which is like really important, a ceasefire. It's good that there's people in Congress that are taking that step, even though I might not have a lot of confidence in that kind of process sometimes. It's better that there's people in Congress making these arguments rather than having total uniform support for this kind of violence. But I guess that's the criticism that I have, is that when you give in to all these like demands for denunciation, you sabotage your own argument. Like, why should we have a ceasefire then? You're calling for a ceasefire against the people that you yourself acknowledge are violent, murderous, savage rapists, you know? I think we just have to totally reject that framing. It's all about deflecting the current issue. Right as the bombing begins again, the Western media turns around and starts drumming up Hamas bad rhetoric again. It's really, no, it honestly, it was like clockwork, wasn't it? It's like the ceasefire ends, the bombing resumes, they kill 700 people in one day, over 700. And I was going with like death counts from a few days ago, and I was talking about this yesterday. I'm seeing like death counts in the 20,000s now in Gaza. 20,000 people. A huge majority of them children. And like clockwork, this shit resumes again, which is indefensible. It's inexcusable. It's barbaric. And all these people that are out there making these arguments support it. And like clockwork, it's Monday morning, and it's just like, we're talking about We're talking about impossible to prove allegations of organized Hamas rape gangs on October 7th. And that's what the discourse is. And then we're talking about, and then it's like, okay, yeah, 20,000 people killed, whatever. But look at that. Do you denounce that? Surely you must denounce that. It's really sick and insidious, I think, seeing this.
Violence. As you well know, many women and girls were attacked brutally by Hamas on October 7th, and they have testified
20,000 people killed
to the gender-based violence.
They've testified to the gender-based violence that they both experienced and witnessed. In the Haaretz article that is promoting this story, literally says in the article, there have been no testimonies. The headline says testimony after testimony. And then in the article, it clearly states that there have been no such testimonies. There's been no testimonies. There's been no physical evidence. There's literally nothing. And like we were talking about yesterday, we don't need to have some kind of blanket denial or pretend that people in this situation are acting like angels or that terrible, horrible things didn't happen, that violence wasn't committed against civilians. You know, sexual violence is a part of like every war zone. It's absolutely horrendous. We don't need to pretend that there's not a possibility that that kind of thing didn't happen. But what these accusations are, though, are organized mass gangs of Hamas rapists deliberately using sexual violence as part of their strategy. That's what the accusation is being made here, which is something that there's zero evidence for. If there was any evidence, we would have seen it weeks ago. And relic, I mean, we saw it on like October 8th. You know, women are being dragged through the streets naked. They're being dragged through the streets. They're being attacked and dragged through the streets naked, which was proven to be not accurate. The implication is that they're raping because they're Muslim or Arab. I mean, that's exactly why I talked about in that tweet that I referenced the Colonialism 101 playbook, because this is exactly what it is. You know, there's a direct link between like slavery era America or a Jim Crow era America. The exact justification. Even Hillary Clinton herself. Do you know what? When Hillary Clinton helped overthrow Libya, do you think overthrowing Libya was good for women and girls, by the way? Do you think that's been a good situation for women and girls in Libya? Overthrowing the Gaddafi government? But when that was going on, while Hillary Clinton was the Secretary of State, we saw the exact same headlines. Gaddafi is using rape as a weapon of war, giving Viagra to Libyan troops. That was the claim that was being made. And one thing that I fervently believe about this is that they would be doing the Viagra thing right now about Hamas in this story if they didn't feel like we kind of used that one already. We can't go back because that was proven to be not accurate also. I really, really think they would have used that if they thought they could get away with it. They're saying everything up to and including that point. Anyway, let's just look at the rest of this.
Both experienced and witnessed.
So that's not true.
As a global community, we must respond to weaponized sexual violence wherever it happens with absolute condemnation.
And Hillary Clinton and no one else sharing this story has ever condemned the many, many documented accusations and testimonials from Palestinian women and girls being attacked and sexually assaulted in Israeli prisons. Hillary Clinton has not ever said one word about that. Nothing. And there is actual evidence to support this.
There can be no justifications and no excuses. Rape as a weapon of war is a crime against humanity.
20,000 people killed. By the way, also to not even talk about Palestinian women and girls being sexually assaulted in Israeli prisons. Has it been good for Palestinian women and girls to have thousands of bombs dropped on their residential neighborhoods? Has that been good? Has that been beneficial to Palestinian women and girls to have white phosphorus dropped on them? When female Palestinian nurses and teachers and doctors and journalists like Shireen Abu Akleh, when they're murdered by the Israeli regime, does that promote women's rights?
Atrocities have no place in any society or any conflict.
But she's not criticizing it when Israel does these things.
It's outrageous that some who claim to stand for justice are closing their eyes and their hearts
it is outrageous.
to the victims of Hamas. As you well know.
Yeah, absolutely sick. Yeah, we're going to take a look at that in a minute, Raven Payne. We're going to take a look at that in just a moment.
But first,
okay, there's that. From 2011, Gaddafi supplies troops with Viagra to encourage mass rape, claims diplomat. U.S. Ambassador Susan Wright also said without offering evidence that Iran was helping Syria to suppress dissent. This was proven to be false. One of America's most senior diplomats claimed at the United Nations Security Council that Muammar Gaddafi is supplying his troops with Viagra to encourage mass rape, according to diplomats. Susan Rice, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, made the claim while accusing Gaddafi of numerous human rights abuses. Early in the week, Rice also claimed without offering evidence that Iran is helping Syria suppress internal dissent. It's the exact same story. And like I said, they would be using the Viagra thing if they felt like they could get away with it, if they hadn't already done that. There's David Frum. Like, again, this was like coordinated. This is honestly coordinated. There was the interview with Pramila Jayapal. There's Hillary Clinton. There's David Frum. There's Jake Tapper. Some fucking demonic memo went out this weekend. And everyone got their little talking points for the week while the violence resumed, while we passed 20,000 civilians killed in Gaza. David Frum says, Hamas violated the ceasefire terms with Israel in order to cover up sexual abuse of female hostages. That's the headline. According to notorious liar and propagandist and war criminal David Frum. Like, just the very fact, if people think it's insensitive that I cast doubt on some of these claims, like just the very fact that people like Hillary Clinton and David Frum, absolute monsters with blood on their hands, absolute monsters, with significantly more blood on their hands than Hamas, I could say, as well. As much as they've tried to turn Hamas into the evil baddie that's supposed to justify the mass murder of civilians in Israel, David Frum and Hillary Clinton combined have more blood on their hands than Hamas could ever hope to in a lifetime. Yeah, and Relic, thanks for sharing this. I wanted to look at this next. Remember, every accusation. This is John Paul resigned from the State Department over sending arms to Israel. Oh, I wonder if there's a. This is a 15-minute clip. I would like to watch this whole clip, but there's a specific. Let me see if I can find just a specific clip before we look at the whole thing. What's his name? Josh Paul.
To Palestinians, we have to condemn the atrocities that happen every day to Palestinians in the West Bank. You mentioned sexual violence. I was part of the human rights vetting process for arms going to Israel, and a charity called Defense of Children International Palestine drew our attention at the State Department to the sexual assault, actually the rape of a 13-year-old boy that occurred in an Israeli prison in the Mosque Bia in Jerusalem. We examined these allegations. We believe they were credible. We put them to the government of Israel. And you know what happened the next day? The IDF went into the DCIP offices and removed all their computers and declared them a terrorist entity. I think it is vital that atrocities not happen to anyone, not sexual violations, not any kind of gross violation of human rights. We are looking at a situation where there is so much dehumanification, where people are not seen for the value that they have. We have to condemn the atrocities.
Interesting. This is while we're getting this moralizing browbeating about sexual violence and about how we can't, when we suggest that Israel doesn't have the right to murder tens of thousands of people, thousands of children, we get accused of supporting this kind of sexual violence. Nothing so far from any of these people, according to Hillary, which needs to be universally condemned. Always projection. Was this 2013? I don't know. Was Hillary still the Secretary of State at that time, or was it John Kerry by then? Not that it really matters. Again, Libya happened under Hillary Clinton's watch, including those kinds of exact kinds of accusations about using rape as a weapon of war. And like we were pointing out, for as much as we try to pretend that like this kind of violence, when we're talking about either Libya or Syria or Palestine, it has been a disaster for women and girls in Libya and Palestine. The actions of the United States government and the Israeli government and their proxies. It's been an absolute disaster. I'm sure none of these 12-year-olds arrested for throwing rocks experienced any sexual assault in Israeli prisons. Again, these are widespread claims. There's been countless accusations, testimonials from Palestinian women, which Hillary has not said one fucking word about. She's not said one word about it, ever. But now that Israel has killed 20,000 people in Gaza, now it's so important. It's so important, according to Hillary Clinton, that we must condemn this story, completely unproven and impossible to prove, actually, narrative about mass organized roving Hamas rape gangs on October 7th. And that's what we're supposed to be talking about. You know, it's so grotesque. It's truly unbelievable. Yes, certainly impossible to prove now. Absolutely. There's this State Department spokesman.
Yeah, Said, go ahead.
So I understand you correctly. You're saying that
it's just inner city super predator type rhetoric again, for sure.
Of 700.
That's what I mean. That's why I say in that tweet, which upset so many people, that it's out of that colonialism 101 playbook. Like this is part of the narrative strategy of like the colonist, the colonial mentality, the wagon circle, the garden in the jungle, protecting our beautiful virginal women from the savage rapist hordes, the swarthy hordes. This trope is just used time and time and time and time again to excuse and justify colonization and theft and exploitation. throughout history.
Over a period of 24.
Saeed, I always, I always like when I use my own words, not when you try to put words in my mouth.
I want to understand what you said properly. You said that we have seen improvement. I'm asking you directly. You think that the killing of 700 people in 24-hour period is an improvement? So I'm just asking you to say yes or no.
I don't
in
think,
accordance to what you said.
So Saeed, I don't think you were listening very closely to what I said.
I was listening very closely.
Well, clearly not, because what I said is we have seen improvement in their plans for Khan Yunis, their plans for the South. We have seen them evacuate specific neighborhoods rather than entire areas. So the number.
It's hard to find anything to like chuckle at about this. There's this sick part of me that I feel like a sort of like Schadenfreude about seeing these kind of like establishment liberals have all their credibility just totally destroyed, and they're out there trying to make excuses and justifications for what everyone around the world recognizes just totally like unrestrained, unapologetic barbarism. And they're still like putting all their credibility into supporting that. Oh, their plans are improving. You know, they're really trying to do better. Like, no one believes this. Certainly Israel doesn't believe it. They're obviously not actually trying to do. They hold these people in total contempt. That's the ridiculous thing about it. The Israelis hold the Biden administration in complete contempt. And all these efforts that they're making to like make them like turn down the cruelty knob from an 11 to a 9, and they're just laughing and spitting in their faces as they continue to engage in just massacre after massacre after massacre. And then you have these fucking soulless flacks, PR people, PR frontmen for the empire, trying to like put some kind of like liberal rhetorical sheen on it. It's so embarrassing.
Of displaced persons will hopefully be lower in southern Gaza than it was in the north. But when it comes to results, we are going to monitor it very closely. And I think I was pretty clear about that. And I think the secretary was pretty clear about that on Thursday.
We're monitoring it very closely.
What would be acceptable? What would be acceptable? Because you talked about...
Saeed, we mourn the loss of every civilian life. We don't want to see any civilians killed in this.
You're paying for the bombs, sir.
Remember, Gaza is the size of Washington, D.C. When you tell people to move, like now, and they have nowhere to go. They're striking in Khan Yunis. They're saying, actually, we're hitting every place.
No, these people are monsters. These are demons and monsters.
People should go.
Be the end?
Saeed, let's take it one question at a time. Before you asked a question, let me answer it.
Sure.
People should go to the UN designated sites.
They're bombing those sites
that are on Israeli lists as deconfliction.
Israel is literally going to the UN. There've numerous incidents of them bombing those exact locations, bombing UN workers, and going to the UN and saying the UN is Hamas, and openly, unapologetically saying this. Like, what is the fucking disconnect here? They should go to the UN sites, the UN sites which we've all seen with our eyes that have been bombed repeatedly over the last few weeks. Those the UN sites that you're referring to? It's truly amazing.
Zones that should not be the target of military
but
campaigns.
They are the target.
There are already people who are sheltering in those. As the campaign moves to the south and Israel evacuates specific neighborhoods or orders specific neighborhoods to be evacuated, that is where people should go.
Okay, but we know that they bombed UN facilities and so on. Let me ask you a couple of other questions. You said that Hamas committed atrocities, right? Okay. Do you call the killing of 20,000? Do you call the killing of 20,000 Palestinians an atrocity? So, does that befit the term atrocity?
Saeed, I was speaking to the intentional murdering.
And that's the giveaway, right? That's the difference. Hamas intentionally kills civilians. When Israel or America kills civilians, we don't mean to. We don't mean to. It's an accident, and we feel really bad about it. And when Hamas does it, it's on purpose, and they like it. That's the big difference. And they're really still saying that. Like, that's what's amazing to me. Like, they're still saying, how do you accidentally kill 20,000 people? That's what they're saying. That's what official spokesman from the State Department of the United States of America is saying about this conflict. Israel killed those 20,000 people by accident. Like, what? I don't even know what to say about that. If like, even if that's true, well, it seems like your fucking military is kind of an amateur hour situation. If that is true, if we're going to take you at your word there, where this is what separates us from the barbarians. When we kill people, it's by accident. We feel super bad about it. Well, when you accidentally kill 20,000 people, you're doing a pretty fucking bad job. And perhaps you need to like reevaluate some things. You know? To say nothing for the fact, even when we say, oh, we feel so bad about it, they clearly do not feel bad about it. They're going on TV and openly, unapologetically bragging about it and suggesting that there are no civilians. Like they're openly doing collective punishment to civilians. That's been what the whole last 2 months have been. They've been very clear about this. They've been very unapologetic about it. And you still have these fucking weasels in the United States State Department being like, well, they're doing it by accident. Like, it's truly amazing.
That we saw Hamas attack, that we saw Hamas commit. I don't think.
Yeah, you know you're
correct me
fucking
if I'm
lying,
wrong,
sir.
I don't think there is anyone questioning that Hamas intentionally killed civilians.
Right.
That
And
is
you
by
don't think-
that is by definition an atrocity.
And you don't think that Israel intentionally kills
We
civilians?
think far
When
too
you
many
bomb
people.
not- when you bomb neighborhoods,
I have not seen evidence that they are intentionally
There's
killing
no
civilians.
And they wonder why no one believes this shit. Really. And they think young people don't support the Joe Biden administration because of TikTok. Young people support Palestine because of TikTok. And yeah, again, if you unintentionally kill 20,000 people, you're doing a bad job. And also, that's not an excuse. If I go drive around in my car and I put on a blindfold and I run over 20,000 people and be like, listen, I was just trying to get to work. I totally didn't mean to. I'm so sorry. You say that to the judge and see what they have to say about it. It was an accident. It was an accident when I killed all those thousands of people. And I feel really bad about it. And the judge said, you're free to go, sir. You're free to go. You didn't mean to. It was just an accident. Yeah, I think it's true. Doc, not strange. Like the military can see this is bad. Like even not on a moral level, just on a strategic level. But the administration is filled with people who just unequivocally believe in Israel's right to do whatever they want.
We believe that far too many civilians have been killed. But again, this goes back to the underlying problem of this entire situation, which is that Hamas has embedded itself inside civilians, inside civilian homes, inside mosques, in schools, in churches. It is Hamas that is putting
UN
these civilians
evacuation
in harm's way.
centers,
For
right?
all the questions, and I understand why people stand
They
up.
don't-
I stand.
This whole thing about Hamas embedding in civilian infrastructure, they're in Gaza. They don't have military bases. Like there's nowhere to go. If you have some kind of like an organized armed resistance or militia, you only have the infrastructure that's there. Literally, what are this like? Where are you supposed to do? Like, these people have talked repeatedly about how you have a right under international law to resist occupation. They're embedded in the Warsaw Ghetto. That's right. They're embedded in these Vietnamese villages. Viet Cong. The Viet Cong, they're embedded everywhere. In these villages. We don't know whether the villagers are Viet Cong themselves, but if they're not, they support them. They're hiding them, they're lying for them, they're supplying them. Literally the same thing. This is just insane.
And people ask me questions about what Israel should do. I'm happy to take those questions.
Right.
I'm surprised I don't hear more people saying, why doesn't Hamas lay down its arms? Why doesn't Hamas move out of schools?
So
why doesn't Hamas take additional steps to
why don't
protect
they
civilians?
just stop
because
fighting?
we think they should, as we think Israel should.
Okay, so you are asking Hamas to surrender. Is that what you're asking them to do?
We would welcome
just
Hamas
lie
laying
down and
its
let it
arms
happen.
and surrender.
Then, of course, if that were to happen, Israel would finally stop. They would stop occupying. They would stop bombing. Of course, if Hamas disbanded tomorrow and they turned in all the homemade missiles and whatever small arms they've managed to smuggle in. They all surrendered to the authorities. Of course, Israel would right away say, okay, now that we can stop now. We can stop the violence. We can stop the colonization. What about the West Bank? It's a good question. Where there is no Hamas. Yet Israel still seems to be murdering hundreds of people there. Hamas does not exist there. Why don't they just lay down and die? That's what the recommendation is. These people are these are monsters. These people are monsters. Now you can have a state. That's right. Does anyone believe this? Even the people that's saying it.
At any point.
Hamas is not an army. They don't have air force. They don't have a navy. They don't have artillery. They have none of these things. They don't really have any kind of regular kind of structure that they can conduct their surrender.
You know, that Saeed, they may not have a navy. No. Let me finish. They may not have an air force. They have sufficient firepower to have killed 1,200 people on October 7th. So don't tell me that Hamas can't lay down their arms.
We're still going with
and take
that
additional
also.
steps to protect civilians.
That
let alone
number is not even
moving
accurate
out of all
anymore.
the areas that are putting Palestinian civilians in harm's way. They absolutely can. They could do it today if they cared at all about civilian life.
These people are just monsters. Absolute monsters. And Carrier Wave sent this poem by Leonard Cohen. All there is to know about Adolf Eichmann. I can't look at it because I'm not signed into Tumblr and it's annoying to look at. Eyes, medium. Hair, medium. Weight, medium. Height, medium. Distinguishing features, none. Number of fingers, 10. Number of toes, 10. Intelligence, medium. What did you expect? Talons? Oversized incisors? Green saliva? Madness? These people are absolute monsters. Just monsters. $20,000 people killed, and we're talking about that. It's all just an accident. They kill people intentionally. We kill people by accident. We feel really bad about it. Okay, well, let's look at this electronic intifada video about this, featuring former guest of the show, John Elmer. Glad to hear it went well up the Reds. And just before we get started on this video by Electronic Intifada, I'm going to link the video in the chat. Please make sure you're following and subscribe to their work, because their journalism on this over the last couple of weeks has been really, really essential. Just want to remind you before we get started, if you do want to support this program, folks, you can do so by subscribing. As you know, I must make the little number at the bottom of the screen go up every day. It's the only way that I'm able to continue doing this program each and every day is through the generosity of the community members, which I do appreciate a whole lot. So if you can, please subscribe. It's $5, or you can gift subs if that's possible, or bits, or tips, or subscribe on Patreon. Whichever way is easiest for you. Every little bit helps. I appreciate it a lot. You get the tiny little images, some of the very best tiny little images on this entire platform.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
I refuse to sub.
And I respect that. I respect that, Blursid. Oh, Old Dutch, couldn't agree more, actually. Going to keep recommending this because it's such a good podcast. Everyone check out the Tanky Group Therapy episodes of East is a Podcast. It's been good for my mental health. Me too. I've been listening to the October 7th was a prison break episode, and it's just fantastic. Couldn't recommend that more. It's really fantastic. In fact, I should probably get Seema to come on this show again to talk about some of this stuff because he has a lot to say about it. We've got Ali in HD possibly looking around for a gift sub here. I'm going to go ahead with this segment in just a moment. Just wanted to just remind people that if you can, to please subscribe to this program that you're watching right now. It really helps me out. It's the only way that I'm able to keep doing this. And I thank you. I thank you very much. I should reach out to Seema.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Old Dutch, I think we need a crossover there. I think I need to appear on that. I'm going to put myself out there for Seema to see if I can get on there. Yeah, serious people having serious conversations. I like that they keep expanding the universe. Yeah, and it's like it's just conversations like the one that we're about to look at with the Electronic Intifada that you just don't see. You just don't see on our media. You might see some varying degrees of pushback. Sometimes you'll see someone like Jake Tapper or Piers Morgan or whoever like push back on some of these narratives or hold some Israeli spokesperson's feet to the fire, but no one actually having the kinds of discussions that are happening on Electronic Intifada or East is a Podcast or this show also, I should say. And thank you, Blursid, for the gifted sub as well. I appreciate that, Blursid.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Bleep Lord, thank you. Thank you for the 3 gifted subs. That's very kind of you. Very much appreciated. Very cool. Okay. Well, let's watch this clip here from Electronic Intifada, and I will remind you in another hour or so to support this program, if you don't mind. I have to do it. You know I have to do it. We all understand how this shit works. Believe me, if any famous like millionaires or billionaires want to sponsor the work that I have to do so I don't have to rely on these wonderful people in the chat, I would love that. Believe me, no one would be happier about that than me. I'm not quite there at that level yet, though. Malheureusement. Daddy needs a new Cybertruck. I wouldn't say that. I don't think that is anything that I would be doing. I don't think I'll be purchasing the old Cybertruck. Mountain Dew the Rousseau. But it's bulletproof. Yeah, if I'm going to be attacked by an old-timey, like, Tommy gun, some, like, old-timey gangster is going to come after me and go, "Meh, see, meh." Like, if I was worried about that, then maybe I would think about the Cybertruck. It really is something out of a Verhoeven commercial. Like, it really, really is. More like Cyber Suck. Oh, my. And not aim for the windows at all. Yeah, you can't have that. You'll never catch me, copper. Okay, let's take a look at this. Thanks again, everyone, for supporting the show, as always. And again, please support Electronic Intifada. give them a thumbs up, a like, a comment, subscribe, because they've been doing really, really valuable work. And I was really happy to have John Elmer come on the show the other day. Okay, here we go.
First, we wanted to discuss some of the most pervasive propaganda we're seeing. And I just want to warn our viewers and listeners that we're going to be talking about sexual assault. So please take appropriate caution. Ali, you've been looking at a disturbing set of allegations Israel has been making regarding mass sexual assault and rape by Hamas fighters on October 7th. I understand there are some new developments around that could help provide a framework for people to understand what they're being fed by corporate media and the Israeli government. What do we know, and what are you looking at right now?
Yeah, there's some really nasty stuff circulating, and I really want to break it down for people who are watching. First, I mean, let's just remind people, we've talked quite a few times over the last few weeks about all the lies and deceptions surrounding what happened on and after October 7th. And from the very start, Israel and its supporters have spread really inflammatory lies. You'll recall the infamous tale of the 40 beheaded babies. That was a horrific lie that President Biden keeps repeating, despite advice from his own staff that there was actually no evidence for it. And in fact, there is no evidence for it. It's a lie. And indeed, according to TRRS, the Israeli newspaper, only one baby was killed on October 7th. And as you can see here from the journalist Mohammed Shahade, he's pointing to a very recent TRRS story over the weekend, debunking some of these early, what he calls iconic horror stories from October 7th. So the 40 beheaded babies. There was also a story of a baby burned in an oven, a pregnant woman's stomach opened and her fetus removed, children bound together and burned, and a pregnant hostage giving birth. Many of these atrocity stories people will have heard, and they were circulated not just by media and pro-Israel.
You see, even when they get walked back to it doesn't really matter.
Most on social
there are
media,
millions of people
also
still that will for the rest of their lives believe that these like horror stories are true about October 7th. Like, it doesn't, you can walk those things back. You can say, oh, it didn't happen. Like when the president of the United States is saying it, it's now true. It's now true for millions and millions of people.
The Israeli government itself. And now Haaretz is admitting that many of them were fake, and it's actually tracing how these fake stories made it into the mainstream. So that's just some context.
Let's talk a little bit more about how these stories are disseminated and what role the media, especially Western media, has been playing in circulating these, propaganda stories.
Yeah, that's really one of the most disturbing aspects of all this, the way media have amplified these horrifying propaganda tales without even asking Israel for a shred of evidence. They just accept everything Israel says. For example, for weeks, they've parroted Israel's claims that 1,400 people were killed on October 7th. That was the number we heard constantly. Then about 2 weeks or so ago, Israel reduced the number from 1,400 to 1,200 after admitting that hundreds of burned bodies it initially claimed were Israelis burned by Hamas were actually Palestinians incinerated by indiscriminate Israeli fire. And now Israel seems to have reduced the number yet again down to about 1,000. This is a tweet over the weekend from one of the Israeli government's official accounts. And
over 1,000 of our loved ones.
From 1,400 to 1,200 and now to 1,000. And I haven't seen any explanation why that number is dropping. But you still don't see mainstream media in the West really asking any questions, even when there has been revelation after revelation, mostly coming from Israel
We've had
itself,
to revise the number of 9/11s
about how
downwards,
Israel killed many of its own people on October 7th. And, we've talked about that in previous live streams. And of course, we've covered that very extensively at the Electronic Intifada. But despite all these revelations of lies and false stories and a truth very different from what Israel says it is, it's happening all over again.
How is this happening again? And who are the players behind this?
Yeah, well, now the big push is again with this story of the mass rapes. And now, just to be clear, they made these allegations right at the beginning, right on and after October 7th. But
It's
there's a
really
renewed
crazy how,
push
like clockwork,
in
this started on
days
the
from
weekend
Israel
and on
and
Monday.
its lobby groups claiming that Hamas fighters carried out systematic mass rapes as part of their strategy on October 7th. And this is a story, this tweet we see up on the screen is Barry Weiss. She is a longtime pro-Israel propagandist. We could do a whole show on her, but I won't go into much more detail about her today. But she is posting a story from the Jewish Chronicle, a British newspaper, quoting a supposed eyewitness I'll come back to later. And you can see there's some really lurid and terrible claims that
spooky.
Citing an alleged eyewitness saying, I saw this beautiful woman with 8 or 10 of the fighters beating and raping her. She was screaming, stop it. I'm going to die anyway from what you're doing. Just kill me. And she calls these alleged perpetrators savages. And there are other examples of this. There's a story today in the New York Post, and it draws on pretty much the same sources. By the way, these photos are not of people being raped. They're just inflammatory photos that have been put in there to make you to make you think that there's more to this than is actually there. But nobody is alleging that the woman who appeared in that image there was actually a victim or a survivor of sexual assault. It's just, again, it shows how images and words are put together in these inflammatory ways. So what I want to say, and then, here's just an example of how this is being
crazy,
pushed at the highest level. Gal Gadot, who is this Hollywood actor, not very good from the reviews I've read, but in this role, she's being deployed to complain that there's silence over the alleged sexual-based violence.
What silence?
By
they
Hamas.
haven't stopped talking about it.
But the key point, and there are many stories like this going back to October 7th, none of them I've actually seen quotes anyone who claims to have been themselves a victim of such an assault. There are always unverified claims from unnamed witnesses, except in the latest claims, which we'll come to later, or their second or third hand stories. And there's a reason for that, and it's because Israeli police say they do not have any victims.
No victims.
Yeah. So here's a story from CNN on November 19th with the sensational headline, Israel investigates sexual violence committed by Hamas as a part of October 7 horror. That's a pretty awful headline. But right down there in the CNN story, we learn that Israeli police admit that there are no identified victims. It says, Police Superintendent Dudi Katz said officers have collected more than 1,000 statements and more than 60,000 video clips related to the attacks that include accounts from people who reported seeing women raped. He added that investigators do not have first-hand testimony, and it is not clear whether any rape victims survived. And when they say there are 1,000 statements and more than 60,000 video clips, they're referring to all of October 7th, not specifically to rapes. But what they're saying here
they're still doing the steamed
we don't
hams
have
bit. That's
anyone
right.
who says they were actually assaulted, which is odd given that they claim that this was a mass strategy with, where it was systematic. And amazingly, not only do they not have any identified victims, but they also have no forensic evidence. And so let's take a look at another story. This is from the Times of Israel.
Well, let's
and this
uncritically
was
repeat all these
published,
claims, though.
earlier in November, on November 9th. And actually, I'll say this Times of Israel story is part of a genre. I've seen several stories like this. There was one in the Times of Israel, this one, another one in Haaretz, and
a whole lot of people claim they saw beheadings and rapes in that film Israeli has been showing to influencers and media. Does that mean that, like, in the film, there's people making these claims? Like, is that what you mean, PM Trio? Maybe it would be worthwhile to look at Owen Jones's video about it, actually, because Owen Jones watched this video and talked about what was in it and what was not in it and got attacked a lot, even though he's tried to condemn all the people that needs to condemn, like, and they've tried to kind of play that games, Owen Jones and like some of the people in Novara Media, while also trying to report on Israel's crimes and while also trying to stand with people in Palestine. Maybe it would be worth it to watch his video as an actual accounting of what is in this mystery movie. And that's another thing as well. It's like, no matter what's in this movie, and I've never denied, and I know no one in this chat has ever denied that certainly terrible things happened and that civilians were killed on October 7th, and that's a tragedy and it's horrible. There is nothing that I could see in that video, though, that would justify a 2-month-long carpet bombing campaign of a concentration camp that kills 20,000 people. There's no justification for it. If you think there's no justification for Hamas or whoever else killing civilians on October 7th, then there's certainly no justification for killing 20,000 people in response to that. You watch the Owen Jones video, it's about what you'd imagine. So what's in this? They got the secret GoPro footage. As people say as well, it's like, you're denying that these happened. Actually, Hamas had GoPro footage this whole time. Well, it's like, well, why hasn't everyone seen it then? Just look at the Telegram footage. Just look at the GoPro footage. But they're just saying that as a way to say, like, of course it exists, and but like they're still not verifying any of it. So Matt, in that video, like, what does Owen claim is actually in this clip, like in these videos? I know with absolute certainty, children are dying today. The rest is hearsay, deflection of their ongoing war crimes. Exactly. And like we were saying, this narrative, this like coordinated narrative, really just like, they've been saying it since day one, like they've pointed out in this video, but this coordinated narrative has been happening since Monday to revisit these accusations about mass rape gangs. Worst, Owen says, happened is a guy chucking a grenade into a home. No, Raven Paint, there's no justification for the war crimes and the mass murder that we've seen. There's zero justification for it. So they were all instructed to do rapes, and they all had GoPros to document their attacks, but none of them GoPro'd those crimes. I guess so. I guess that's what we're supposed to believe about this. I don't know.
There have been similar stories in the Washington Post and other newspapers as well, which again start from the premise that there was a huge number of rapes and sexual assaults, but then they're all about explaining why there's no evidence of this. And so this is a good example of that. So this particular story in the Times of Israel says, quote, in the wake of the unprecedentedly large mass casualty event, Physical evidence of sexual assault was not collected from corpses by Israel's overtaxed morgue facilities amid their ongoing scramble to identify the people killed, many of whose bodies were mutilated and burned. And so this article, like some of the others I've mentioned, is full of these little explanations for why they didn't collect any forensic evidence. Although you will find lots of claims that this first responder saw a body that looked like they may have been assaulted, and so on. But none of these people are experts. And
again, like, I'm not going to sit here and claim with any degree of certainty that no assaults or sexual violence happened. We don't know. It's certainly plausible to imagine. But this is not what the claim is. The claim is mass organized rape gangs deliberately using sexual violence as a weapon of war. Like, that's what the claim that, like, Hillary Clinton is making. And, like, this big coordinated narrative that's been promoted over the last couple of days. That's the claim.
See here in this Times of Israel quote, they say many of those bodies are mutilated and burned. And you'll recall, of course, that it later emerged that at least 200 of those burned bodies were not Israelis or potential Israeli rape victims, but Palestinians incinerated by the Israeli military. And you'll also see...
Yeah, and that's true, Joe, but also I don't think what Electronic Intifada is doing right now, or what we're doing, is debating it. But what we are talking about is talking about, like, what this narrative, like, how this narrative starts, the people that are behind promoting this narrative, and what the purpose of it is. It's not about debunking, but it's about analyzing these claims, these waves of atrocity propaganda that we get, and understanding, like, why these claims are being made, and, like, where this narrative comes from and why it's happening. Which I think is really important, because it helps us in the future, I think, when other claims like this are made, and it certainly is going to happen again. It helps us in the future when these narratives are promoted, or when these propaganda tactics are used. It helps us to understand that that's what's going on. Because, like, when this kind of atrocity propaganda is really used like this, it can make you feel really, really afraid to speak out. Even, like, I was as well. Like, on October 7th, I talked about how, I celebrated the Gaza prison fence being bulldozed. I celebrated these IDF positions being attacked, because those are, like, if you know anything about Gaza, those are things that you should celebrate. And IDF positions and checkpoints and bases are legitimate military targets that Palestinians have not only a legal but a moral right to attack, according to international law. And then you start. That's when the atrocity narratives start, the atrocity propaganda, and you get inundated with it, and it makes you second guess yourself, and it makes you think, like, oh, I shouldn't, maybe I shouldn't have said anything. Maybe I should, like, apologize. Maybe I should delete tweets. Maybe I should, like, walk that back. Maybe I should, but it's like that. And when you withstand that, you realize later, all these claims start to fall apart. They don't hold up to basic scrutiny. And the next time when those moments come, we saw the same thing with Russia and Ukraine a lot. And a lot of the same stuff about Russia and using rape as a weapon of war and stuff, that same narrative as well has been used to justify the prolonging and the intensifying of the conflict in Ukraine and the continued arming of Ukrainians, including these Nazi militias. So yeah, I think those moments when it's really difficult, it makes you disoriented, it makes you feel really uncomfortable, it makes you second guess yourself. And when we understand these narratives, it gives us a little bit more of a tool the next time this, like, the propaganda button gets pressed. It gives us the tools that we need to, like, withstand that. They caught Israeli commanders literally with their pants down. It was very cool. And I continue to believe it was cool. I agree.
Nora, sometimes that there are claims, and you see this a lot on social media, that there are videos, or even that Hamas fighters took videos of themselves raping Israeli women. But I have seen no, nobody has circulated such a video, and I have seen no.
And if that video existed, it would be in this secret movie. Like this, it would not be it would not be like, oh, eventually we're going to show this. Like this would have been, if they had this kind of evidence, it would have been circulated. Like they tried to circulate fake images of babies in ovens and like all kinds of stuff. If they had actual genuine examples or footage of this, they would be promoting that, and it would be in their little secret video there. You know? The whole secret video thing is so stupid. The steamed hams Hamas video. And then you see all these Zionist influencers being like, oh, I have to like drink. I saw this video and it was so horrendous. I have to drink. These people are barbarians. They're monsters. And they won't really even talk about it. They're like, it was so traumatizing. I can't even talk about it. But ultimately the takeaway is we must continue the bombing. The bombing must continue. You know? Pay-per-view atrocity events. Like, what the fuck is this? Insanity. You don't instantly believe allegations about marauding, swarthy hordes of organized Muslim rapists? Yeah, you don't believe women. Marty, I'm not even dignifying that with a response.
Reports of videos of actual rapes. What you get
meanwhile, we've
instead
seen
of these
nonstop streams of dead kids like every single day.
Various, as I mentioned, first responders saw women with blood on them or with injuries that made them think that person could have been sexually assaulted or raped. But none of these people cited in the media accounts are qualified to make such determinations. And none that I've seen have come from actual forensic pathologists talking about specific victims. It's all just hearsay and sensational claims, and often the so-called witnesses are members of the Israeli army, in other words, members of the organization that is perpetrating genocide against Palestinians.
Right. And there really are no videos. I mean, this is, they can say that there are, we've seen all these videos, the 60,000 different videos from that day, but there's somehow not one that shows any
I've
evidence.
seen no report. I've certainly seen no video of a rape. Thank goodness. That's not something I want to see, or any of us should want to see. But I've not even seen really reports now, more than 2 months later, getting up to 2 months after these events, that such a video exists. And so in recent weeks, Nora, you'll know, and we've mentioned this before, that Israel has been showing I think it's a 45 or 47-minute compilation of videos that it claims depicts atrocities committed by Palestinians on October 7th. And it's shown this documentary to various hand-picked journalists. One of them is Owen Jones of The Guardian, a nominally left-wing journalist who, as we've reported on the Electronic Intifada, has often been quite willing to pander to Israel and its lobby. And I mentioned
it was the same thing with Corbyn.
Jones
he really does.
Be someone.
I don't know, like with Owen Jones, like I try to give him credit. I think he is someone that genuinely has good values, but he proved throughout the Corbyn era that he's so paralyzed by these kinds of accusations that he ends up contributing to them. So you can assign some nefarious purpose to that. You can assign some like naivete to it. Like I don't know what it is. You know, he is being attacked by these Zionist propagandists, like, repeatedly. So he's doing something, you know? He's doing something. But it was the same thing with Corbyn, like all these accusations. Like the Corbyn thing is really, I was thinking about this, is really such a microcosm of the kind of same strategy, you know? On these like baseless accusations, the attacks and like organized attacks, and then when people defended, like it's like, oh, I'm the victim, this like constant victimization routine. Like this is the strategy that destroyed the Corbyn movement. And a lot of people in the British left, especially in this kind of like, who are touching that kind of mainstream sort of credibility, people in the kind of progressive left, fell victim to it. And they tried to support Corbyn while also trying to suggest that there was like credibility to these arguments. And that's one thing we got to be better at next time. We all got to be smarter. We can't let, like, these people are liars. They're liars. The people that were making accusations about anti-Semitism to Jeremy Corbyn were fucking liars. They were lying. It was a scam. And so many people were like, oh, I'm so, if I say these kinds of things, I'm going to be called anti-Semitic. You know? They're going to say that I support terrorism. They're going to say I support anti-Semitism. I can't have that. I have to show them how seriously I take this so I don't get accused of this. But it's like, that's what we have to understand. They're going to say that anyways. That's what they're going to say if we're going to try and criticize Israel, if we're going to try and stand up for Palestinian humanity, they're going to call us anti-Semites. It's not fair. It's not fun. It's not cool. I don't like being called an anti-Semite. I don't like being called a terrorist. But we just have to understand that that's what the stakes are of this argument. And if we're going to stand up and support someone that has a different vision for foreign policy when it comes to Israel or anywhere else, these are the attacks that are going to come, and we got to be ready for it next time. And we can't be like, oh, no, you have a point. The people that are smearing you and trying to destroy you, oh, you have a point. You have a point. We're going to really take you seriously and show how serious we are about about this issue. We can't do that shit anymore. Even if we have good intentions. You know? When they try to pull this shit next time, we got to be ready for it.
Someone who I think would want to, if he saw something, would want to emphasize that it incriminated Palestinians. But last week, Jones attended a screening of this video organized by the Israeli military, and then he did his own video talking about it. Here's a clip of what Jones said after watching what we can only presume is the very best evidence Israel can muster for its allegations.
Are they going to show some?
If living people were beheaded, otherwise, we are not shown that in any of the video footage. If there was torture too, there's no evidence given for it on camera. Now, if there was rape and sexual violence committed, we don't see this on the footage either. Now, a warning here for deeply distressing description, but a clip of an Israeli woman inspecting a badly burned woman's corpse to see if she was a relative. She had no underwear. This has been offered as evidence of rape, but that's not what you would consider conclusive evidence. We don't see children being killed. Hamas don't kill those two poor little boys, for example, certainly not on camera. And I imagine we would have been told if they had been killed. Now,
yeah, so
he's been attacked so much for this, which is why I don't feel like piling on or suggesting that he is some like secret Zionist or whatever. Like, he's been attacked a lot over making that video, and I think that's really interesting that none of those things are present in this video. And again, you have all these influencers being like, "Oh, it's so devastating. I'm so devastated and traumatized by watching this." Meanwhile, we've all seen things, each one of us, 1,000 times worse, and 1,000 times, like, in terms of its like frequency over the last 6 weeks, 2 months.
That video in which the great minds of the Israeli army and government brought together all the best evidence that they could gather doesn't.
And if they had more stuff, it would be in this movie.
pretty much any of the things Israel claimed
It's the
were
same
out
movie they've
there,
been screening.
and certainly doesn't show evidence of rape. Now, of course, people might argue that something like that is simply too horrific to show.
Yeah,
and a
fucking-
lot of what
does anyone
Israel has
believe that?
shown or claims is from
They'll show fake things,
October
but they're
7th is
too
very horrific.
They're just too moral to show the violence to everyone. That's really rich.
But the videos, if they existed, could have been shown in a way that protected the dignity and the identity of the people involved. Or alternatively, Israel could have shown these videos, again, if they existed, to internationally respected and trusted journalists or investigators. But I've read no accounts that any videos corroborating the claims of rape have been shown to any such trusted viewers. But despite this lack of evidence, over the past couple of days, there has been this renewed push to propel this mass rape story into the headlines with new supposed eyewitness testimonies. But again,
yeah, so
I'm
that's my
seeing no
understanding of what
reports
this video
actual
is.
Identified
Or it's some kind of combination of what the Israeli film crews captured afterwards with whatever Hamas footage they've managed to get their hands on also. That's my understanding of what this movie is. The movie that Owen Jones saw that he was just talking about.
Victims or forensic evidence.
Right. And who can we identify as behind this push? We had at the very beginning, the 40 beheaded babies, the babies hung from a clothesline, these the stories of evisceration, like horrible stories that, of course, were debunked. And it was clear that these stories were being fed to the press by certain individuals. What do we know about this story and who's behind it?
Right. Well, it's being pushed from a lot of directions. All those directions originate in Israel.
I think that's what it is, Mostel.
From its lobby. But
I'll be right back. Just one sec,
particular
folks.
name you'll see repeatedly associated with this in recent days is a woman called Kochav El-Kayam Levi. She's being presented, and that's a picture of her. She's being presented as a feminist scholar and international human rights expert who is heading an independent civil commission investigating the alleged use of mass rape as an organized tactic by Hamas fighters on October 7th. And her name is everywhere right now. For example, in this big interview that was published by TRRS on November 30th. And look at that headline. The scope of Hamas's campaign of rape against Israeli women is revealed, testimony after testimony. And the subheading, which I'll read, the aggregation of evidence collected by Dr. Kochav El-Kayam Levi and her civil commission presents a horrifying picture that leaves no room for doubt. On October 7, Hamas terrorists systematically carried out acts of rape and sexual abuse. I want to come back to these claims in a bit, Nora, especially the headline. But first, I want to, can I talk about who Kochav Eliakim Levi is?
Please.
So our friends at Mondowise published a really important article focusing on the mass rape allegations in recent days. I think it was on December 1st. And they took as a starting point a piece by Jake Tapper, or a broadcast by Jake Tapper on CNN on his show. And I really encourage everyone to read the Mondowise piece. And it provides some really crucial information. And I'm just going to share a little bit of that with you. It says, the CNN report begins with an interview with Kochav El-Kayam Levi. She is identified as an expert in human rights law who organized a civil committee to document evidence. The speaker is indeed an expert, but not of human rights law. In her former positions, including a post for the Israeli government's Attorney General's office in the International Law Department, she provided the legal justification for Israeli officials committing human rights violations against Palestinians. She had previously published a guidance for policymaking, government officials, and legal advisors in the management of hunger strikes, which provided a detailed legal manual to allow force feeding, a brutal act of torture used to break political prisoners. So, in other words, this so-called human rights experts is writing guidance for the Israeli government on how to do torture. And Mondoweiss observes that that CNN considered it appropriate to bring her on as a human rights expert, and they note that in her interview with CNN, El-Kayam Levy presents nothing but justifications for the absence of evidence and facts. So that, again, that's a very similar pattern to these articles I mentioned in the Times of Israel and the Washington Post in Haaretz. And this is really important now. CNN hides the tight connections between El-Kayam Halevi and Israel's National Security Council. El-Kayam Levy is also the founder and director of the Dvorah Institute, which works as a close advisory body to the Israeli Prime Minister's National Security Council. The advisory committee for the Dvorah Institute includes a former director of the Israeli Prime Minister's office and 3 former officials in the National Security Council. And here's something else I found. El-Kayam Levy used to work for the IDF spokesperson's unit. That's in the Haaretz article I showed you a few minutes ago. In other words, she used to do propaganda for the Israeli army. And this all appears to be a typical Israeli propaganda effort run out of or run by close associates.
No, I was just saying that this is the article that I was talking about, where it says in the headline, testimony after testimony. When the actual article has 0 actual testimonies in there. And PM Trio said something interesting too. This is why I get so annoyed by anyone called a feminist scholar. They're usually self-claimed and usually only there to justify whatever crimes liberals want to get away with that week and are forgotten just as quickly as they're brought up. Yeah, they're usually just tools to give a sort of veneer of like women's rights to whitewash a whatever Western sponsored atrocity of the week that they're there to cover up.
Of the Israeli Prime Minister's office.
So,
it's actually a really funny headline. It says the aggregation of evidence, the subhead. The aggregation of evidence collected by Dr. Kochav El-Kayam Levy and her civil commission presents a horrifying picture that leaves no room for doubt. On October 7th, Hamas terrorists systematically carried out acts of rape and sexual abuse. She has discovered, however, that there's no rush to acknowledge this abroad. Like, first of all, like, what the fuck is that? There's been a huge rush to acknowledge this. It was acknowledged on October 7th and October 8th and October 9th and October 10th. And now here it is where it's December 5th. We're still acknowledging it. So, yes, has been a rush to acknowledge this. And yet, just setting aside the whole point that even after reading this article and understanding it, there's still, it turns out, plenty of room to doubt. There's actually significant amount of room to doubt still these claims, even in this article.
Of the Israeli Prime Minister's office.
So, an independent girl boss feminism expert, for sure. What is she actually claiming? And in order for her to have proposed or exposed these, these horrifying revelations, she must have been able to dig up new evidence to get so much attention. What's behind this?
Well, you would think so, but let's go back to that Haaretz article again for a minute, the one with the sensational headline claiming that the scope of Hamas's campaign of rape against Israeli women is revealed testimony after testimony.
No testimonies.
Well, let's take a look at this highlight of the
we've
article
definitely talked about
pointed
that
out
in
by
Ninja
the excellent propaganda busting account Propaganda & Co. Their name is ironic.
Thus far, the commission
course.
has not taken testimony directly.
They point out that the headline claims that there is testimony after testimony, but the article itself states, thus far the commission, that's the allegedly independent commission headed by El-Kayam Levy, thus far the commission has not taken testimony directly. And this is not the only giveaway in this article.
Insane.
Let's go.
I know, Orb Lady, we talked about that earlier. It's absolutely, as we've talked about repeatedly, every accusation is a confession. And as much as like Hillary Clinton's talking about, this needs universal condemnation in any case, the kind of sexual violence against women, despite, this article says testimony after testimony with no testimonies. And despite the fact that there's, countless accusations and testimonies and verifiable claims of Palestinian women of being victims of sexual violence in Israeli prisons and in other situations, no condemnation from Hillary, no condemnation from the very people that are making these claims. Sorry, let me get back to this.
Thus far, the commission has not taken testimony directly. And this is not the only giveaway in this article. Let's go through another example if we can. And this is the type of evidence it allegedly contains. And again, now I'm going to read a bit from the Haaretz article. It says,
seriously, Sam,
the Shin Bet Security Service,
this one
of course,
weird
that's
trick,
Israel's secret police, notorious for its use of torture, has released recordings of at least 2 investigations of Nukhba terrorists. Nukhba is the elite unit of the Qassam brigades, the Palestinian resistance. So it claims that they've released recordings from Nukhba terrorists who were asked whether they had been given specific orders to abuse women and children. Referring to the sex crimes, one of them said that the aim was to soil them, to rape them. A second terrorist related that, quote, the commander said, you have to step on their heads, cut off their heads, do everything to them. And again, still reading from Haaretz, a military source cited by the daily Yediot Ahronot noted that the terrorists related that the aim of cutting off heads and rape was to sow fear and alarm in the Israeli public.
And these are interrogations in Israeli prisons. That's where they're getting this information.
Notice about this. First of all, they're citing interrogation videos from an agency whose use of torture is very well documented and acknowledged even in Israel and regulated in Israel. They allow...
That's exactly how the Chicago Police Department locked up an entire generation of black children with this exact strategy. Look, you got you confessing. You confessed all these crimes. They simply tortured them until they confessed all the crimes they needed to, and they put them in jail. When you talk about the connection between like police in the United States and Canada and Israel and the IDF.
To use torture. Secondly, these Palestinian fighters allegedly confessed they were given orders to cut off heads, and yet there is not a single beheading or decapitation that has been documented. So how much...
And again, don't take it from me. Take it from Chris Penn in the film Reservoir Dogs.
You told me about? Are you beating him?
Maybe he could tell us who the fuck set us up.
If you fucking beat this prick long enough, he'll tell you started the goddamn Chicago fire. Now that don't necessarily make it fucking so! Come on, man!
Credibility can you give this? And then the third thing to notice is this is coming from a military source, So the accuser here is the army committing genocide. This is not actual evidence. But this is in the Haaretz article claiming testimony after testimony. So now another key part of the spin in the Haaretz article,
it's the same shit as the goddamn POW flyers. Do some provocative, coordinated, cringe, offensive, and attack anyone with a brain pushing back on them and cry about inhumane leftists. I mean, it's the strategy every time. They're the aggressors, but they act like the victims. And the more violence they inflict, the more they're victimized. And the more they're talking about their own victimhood and their own the violence that's being done to them. You know, it's truly sick, I think.
profiling.
They could literally use a crisis actor to stage the interrogation video. We really need more evidence. They were ordered to weaponize sexual violence. I mean, it seems to me the pertinent thing to me is that even in their top secret Hamas snuff film doesn't contain any footage or any of the things that they've claimed. So what's more valuable evidence? Something that you extract under interrogation from somebody, or the actual, they have, apparently there's GoPro footage. Apparently all these atrocities were documented, the beheadings, the rapes, which doesn't seem to exist. That seems to be more pertinent to me than any the confession that's extracted from someone being interrogated and most likely beaten and tortured. If this had happened the way that they said it happened, there would be actual evidence of that. And if they had that evidence, they would be sharing that with people.
Supposedly independent commission is she complains a lot about the fact that independent bodies and even journalists aren't fully buying into this story and are asking for more concrete evidence. For example, even just a rough estimate of the number of victims or whether there's forensic evidence. And so there you see Haaretz asking, have you found yourself becoming a relay station for the horror stories? And she says, this is El-Kayam Levy says, no, I do not go there myself. Even with requests for numbers, I don't cooperate. They ask me, how many? There was one journalist here, a woman from a foreign news network, who drove me crazy. Are we talking about tens, hundreds, thousands? I'm sorry, no. It would be irresponsible of me to cite a number.
You see, I don't know. I actually think the opposite. I think it's irresponsible to make claims of mass organized rape gangs, and then people say, well, how many, what's the actual number that we're talking about? That's called doing basic journalism. She's talking with this contempt. There's a journalist on foreign news networks driving me crazy, asking me for actual details about these outrageous, scandalous claims that I'm making. Like, what the fuck? It would be irresponsible of me to cite a number when it comes to this, very serious allegation that I'm making. Serious and scandalous allegation. Jesus Christ. And this is the article, again, that's animating all of this, all of these accusations and this narrative that was revived this week. Truly amazing.
So, like the journalist there, this foreign journalist, who, whether they exist or not, we don't know. But if they do, they're asking the right question. Like, are we talking about 1 victim, 10 victims, 100 victims, 1,000? And El-Kayam Halevi is talking like it's outrageous to even ask how many victims there are. I mean, what's wrong with that question? You could say, well, we're not 100% sure yet, but we think it's in this rate. They won't even give a single number, nothing. And then El-Kayam Levy makes another extraordinary statement. Again, this is the same Haaretz article claiming testimony after testimony. And this is what El-Kayam Levy says to explain the fact that no victims have been identified. And I think we can put this quote up on the screen too. Again, this is El-Kayam Levy. She says, yeah, in the case of yeah, she says, in the case of October 7, we'll never know the extent of the damage. We know that the vast majority of those who were harmed were also murdered. So that's one explanation for why there are no, there were mass rapes, but in this chaotic situation, they managed to kill exactly everyone who is subjected to this awful mass rape campaign. If there are survivors among those who are harmed, decades could go by before they gather the courage to talk about it. So, well, there could be living victims, but we might not know that for 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. So don't ask about that now. And then she says, in the few cases in which someone else witnessed their suffering, I assume that then too questions will arise as to exactly what he saw and whether he is a reliable witness. I don't intend to participate in that game. Well, when you have an eyewitness, the first thing you should ask any responsible person would do, whether they're a journalist or investigator or a court of law, is ask, is this eyewitness credible? And what she's saying here is don't even dare ask those questions. We can say anything, or we can put forward anyone and claim they're an eyewitness, and you can't question them.
I will ask
In
it
other
because you're
words,
using it to
Nora,
justify
we just
an
have
ethnic
to
cleansing
take
of
their word.
millions. You killed 20,000 people with these justifications. And they're saying, like, well, we may never know. They're making these claims with total certainty. Total certainty. Mass roving Arab Hamas rape gangs. And this is the evidence that they're using to justify these claims. And they're openly saying, like, we're not giving a number. We may never even know. And like, that's what, and then you have Hillary Clinton just being like, saying with total certainty that this is what happened.
Word for everything.
Yeah.
But why would we when Israel lies about so much, as we've already seen?
Right.
Lie constantly.
Are there any other examples that we can talk about?
Yeah, I know we've spent a lot of time on this, but there are others if you think we should go through them.
Yeah, let's do it.
So, yeah, I'll just go through them quickly. So go back to the Mondoweiss article, a really important article I pointed to earlier. In that CNN report by Jake Tapper that they discuss, there's one example that's talked about where they say that the CNN report presents a video of an Israeli soldier showing only his back and identified by the letter G, claiming to be a paramedic of Unit 669, the Israeli Air Force Special Tactics Rescue Unit. And in his testimony, the soldier says that during a search of the houses in Kibbutz Be'eri, he opened the door of a bedroom to find the bodies of two girls aged between 13 and 15, both killed, one of them naked with semen remains on her lower back. I mean, this is I'm sorry for these graphic images. That's what he claimed, and he claimed this was during combat. But as Mondoweiss notes, upon examining the names of all girls killed in Kibbutz Be'eri on October 7th to match the facts, no pair of Israeli teenagers meeting that description were found dead together. There are other problems with this particular example. That's just one of them. Another being that there's no evidence that this Unit 669 was ever in Be'eri. And there's also a claim from CNN and other media that there's one so-called eyewitness who hasn't been named that Israeli police played a recording of at a press conference in mid-November. And the recording of this eyewitness claimed that she saw with her own eyes a group of Palestinians raping an Israeli woman. And then I think this was the story where they claimed that they then cut off her breast and started tossing it to each other like a ball. Horrifying stuff. But CNN and the other media did not report another thing this alleged eyewitness said in the same recording played by the Israeli police. And I quote from the recording, "I saw one of them carrying a naked girl on his shoulder while the others were raising decapitated heads, like in a kind of demonstration of power. So has anyone else said that they saw Palestinian fighters carrying decapitated heads? Even the Israeli government hasn't said that. But that shows you the credibility of this alleged eyewitness who has been widely cited, and up till recent days, the only alleged eyewitness. And finally, on Kochav El Kayam Halevi, the journalist Max Blumenthal has pointed out that while she is unwilling to share any real information, not even numbers, although she claims to have this vast database of evidence, she's happy to spread disinformation. And here's a video of her presenting an old photo of a deceased Kurdish female fighter, nothing to do with Palestine, and claiming that it is an Israeli woman assaulted at the Supernova rave on October 7th. So this is, she was giving a talk, I think, at Harvard, and it's just a short clip we can play.
Another image shows the body of a young woman stripped from the waist down, her underwear were torn, hung on one leg, and she was photographed on the site at the Nova Music Festival.
Okay, so now, and then
another image,
yeah, that
shows
it's
the body
just
of a young
repeating
woman.
now. We can switch to the next slide, as it were, in which Max Blumenthal documents the pictures that El Kayam Levy is talking about, that they actually come from a completely different country, and they come from May of 2023, and so neither from the place and time that she's talking about. And a final slide I want to show, or tweet I want to show from Max, points to a very pertinent fact that in the reports that are circulating in the last couple of days, and this includes a report in the UK newspaper, the Sunday Times, and it's been circulated in others, quotes an eyewitness called Yoni Saadon, who allegedly witnessed this horrible rape of a beautiful woman who was saying, "Kill me, I'm going to die anyway."
That's what
from
Barry
this thing
Weiss
by
is
5 or
talking
6 fighters. So this witness claims, and as Max points out, that prior to December 3rd, there is no reference to this Yoni Saadon or to this testimony. This simply appeared now out of the blue, 2 months after the event, when Israel found its narrative in trouble.
Ali, I mean, there's so many thoughts I have. I mean, on the one hand, these fabrications are so similar, duplicates to claims that people have made against people of color here in the U.S. Especially, I mean, Emmett Till wasn't that long ago. And these false claims of Black men, or now we're Palestinian men not able to control themselves around white women or Israeli women, is part and parcel of white supremacist ideology. It's meant to incite consent, manufacture consent for whatever comes next, whether it's lynchings or whether it's the genocide of people in Gaza.
That's what I've been saying, Raven.
Like, what's the purpose of all of this?
Yeah, I mean, you're right, Nora. There is a long history of this in colonial history of painting indigenous people or enslaved people as
they just use it with
dangerous,
Russians,
barbaric,
for sure.
savages.
A lot of these narratives,
and particularly the men, who are considered the greatest threat, as sexual predators against the settler women or the white colonial women. And you see that in North America with depictions of Native Americans and enslaved Black men as rapists, and that was often the pretext or excuse for lynching. And it was also very prevalent in apartheid South Africa, where people were the term that was used was zwarte gevaar, which is a Afrikaans or Dutch phrase meaning black
got a BBC
danger.
News alert talking about the reaction to these
women were
non-existent
taught
videos.
that
Good.
black men would rape them, and so this gave an excuse not just to further control these populations, but to kill them, as Israel is doing now, or as with all the lynchings we saw in the South. And of course, as I mentioned in my commentary the other day, the Nazis used this kind of propaganda against Jews, and what it does is it reduces the resistance of the population to the extermination or murder or demonization of this population. You demonize them into this great danger, you rile people's anger up, and using such a visceral stuff. We haven't even gone into how lurid some of the claims are that Israel is making about what happened on October 7th. But that serves the purpose of riling people up at home and abroad to support the extermination of Palestinians.
Or to, at the very, like I was talking about, or to remain silent. Right?
Really what's going on here.
If you're not going to support it, you can at least be scared out of speaking out or showing up to protest.
Innovation of Israel here is not so much to do this in the crude colonial way of the past, but they've put kind of a Me Too spin on it. So now it's all about believe women, believe Israeli women. And if you don't believe these claims, then you're the type of person who doesn't believe women who say they're sexually assaulted. But the problem with that is there are no women to believe.
Yeah, that is number one problem. But no, I don't. When you talk about Israel, I don't believe them. No, because they just constantly lie. They constantly lie over and over and over and over again. So yes, after a certain amount of time, when I've been lied to repeatedly for years and years and years, I start to intrinsically just start thinking when these claims are being made that they're lies. And I go from that and I work backwards from there until it's proven to not be a lie. And when it comes to claims being made by Israel or the United States government or the Canadian government or any kind of colonial or neo-colonial government, I think that's the attitude that you have to have. Assume when these accusations about human rights or women's rights or whatever it is are being made by either political actors or through their stenographers in the media, you just got to assume that it's a lie. Like, these people lie. That's all they do. They lie over and over and over and over again, and eventually you just have to stop believing it. If Brandon can also notch a Vuvuzela invasion in his first term. It's true, yeah. Me too, unless you're a Jew, is the dumbest hashtag I've ever seen. They even made a website for it that's supposed to be some petition, but it looks like an email harvester. Jesus. Yeah, Dakadoon, I mean, that cartoon is so valuable. It's so valuable. You see that it's just been the same narrative over and over and over again.
Because, as I've said, Israel is not so far. Maybe they'll find one months later or decades later, as El-Kayam Levy says.
Watch Me Suffer says, they're misusing believe women. The idea is you don't just ignore and silence claims of rape. You pursue truth and justice rigorously. They don't want that last part. No, they don't. Hamas is ISIS is also a pretty horrible hashtag on account of having cis in it. That's true. Yeah. I mean, I thought that was an amazing thing that when we saw with Greta Thunberg, when she was at like a pro-Palestine rally, and the way that, like, she didn't even say, oh, Greta supports Hamas and Hamas is ISIS. They just completely skipped the middleman and they're like, Greta supports ISIS. That's how completely ridiculous that kind of claim is.
Who claims to have been attacked. But so far, there are no women coming forward and saying, I was a victim of this, believe me. And it's Israel they want us to believe. But why would we believe Israel, which lies 99.999% of the time, as we well know? But I just want people to be aware of the questions to ask when you see these claims and how to challenge this really violent propaganda which is being used to incite and justify genocide. And that's why I think it was important to spend time dissecting it.
Well, I know we really appreciate that, Ali. I know it's not, an easy topic to have to spend days and days and days on, but it is very important, especially when we're talking about manufacturing consent, and using these kinds of just vile and horrific stories to further demonize and dehumanize Palestinians who are fighting for liberation.
Thanks for watching this video. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Asa and John get a lot of time to talk there. I guess they did stuff later in the segment. But yeah, please do subscribe to Electronic Intifada. I'll put the clip here in the chat. Please make sure that you're supporting the work that they do. But I mean, that's a really vital resource, the fact that they're going through all these claims and actually reading the articles and looking at the evidence that this so-called evidence is being used to justify the kind of claims that are being made. It was really shocking to me the way that this narrative really just like emerged this way, though. As the violence resumed, and like I said in that tweet, it's like they know what they're doing is indefensible. Everyone around the world is looking at this and is just totally horrified. So this is the kind of shit that they have to fall back on. It's really pathetic. And it's grotesque, actually. It's disgusting. And it harms women. It harms women to use these kinds of claims to justify a genocide. Again, a genocide that's affecting Palestinian women. And to very cynically use these kinds of claims to justify a mass murder campaign.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old
revolting.
Rob to talk you through all this.
Sunny Sola, thank you very much for the gifted sub to Raven Pain 87. I appreciate it. Thank you. Excuse me. I got about another little less than an hour to go. I'm so tired. I'm so tired all the time. I actually had a couple decent nights sleep the last couple of nights, and I'm just like, I could lie down right now and just be asleep in about 5 seconds. Ugh. Ah. Excuse me. There's a couple more things I wanted to watch. There's apparently this is really good. This video about this guy is getting out of Zionism. I'm really interested in that. Pretty long. But I've heard some incredible things about this video. Time for a patented Watermelon Warlord Rain energy drink. That sounds good, Bleep Lord. I wish I could actually get one of those. This clip is supposed to be fantastic. I don't know. I haven't watched it. I was saving it to watch it on the stream. But this is about someone talking about how they got out of Zionism. Because we've talked a lot about that, right? How it's just like I do try to have sympathy for people, especially people in the West, people that are Jewish, that grew up in this kind of context, that go to Jewish daycare, and there's a real effort to bring people to give people a completely false idea about what Israel is, and they feed them all the propaganda. And it's difficult, I think, to escape from that. When something you've been told about your whole life, it's difficult to start asking questions about that. I think to a certain extent, that's something we all have to do. Like I've said, I grew up in a Western settler colony. I had a very comfortable life as well. And I heard all the stories about Canada and what Canada's values are. Our values of democracy and human rights and all the things that we stand for in this country. You do, after everyone has to go through this process of unlearning and deprogramming themselves from this. But I do have sympathy for people that grow up in this environment and really get inundated with this propaganda narrative about Israel. Let's take a look at this.
How I got out of Zionism. So this is obviously a much longer conversation and a much longer story. But for the sake of brevity, I'll try to tell this, as the Alter Rebbe says, the first rabbi of Chabad. I'll try to tell the long, short version of how this happened.
I'm going to put my headphones so I can hear this. It's not very
So
loud.
in 2018, when I was 20 years old, I was studying in Jerusalem in an all-male religious nationalist seminary. And obviously I grew up very Zionist. And while I was there, I started having questions about the entire population that existed beyond these walls. And as part of my program, there were individuals who were doing this interesting program where folks actually met Palestinians and heard some of their perspectives. And for me, I had heard some good things about that program, and some of the things that they were saying were interesting and appealing, so I decided to go to that program. And I remember it was a Friday before Shabbos, and I was sitting there at 9 a.m. in Jerusalem, and a Palestinian man had come to speak to us. And he was describing how he had to get up at 4:30 a.m. to make it to Jerusalem at 9 a.m. Even though he lived in Ramallah, which is only like 7 miles away. So obviously my brain goes, well, that doesn't make any sense. Surely it shouldn't take you more than 4 hours to go 7 miles. And then I listened how he proceeded to talk about the system of checkpoints, how he had to get on a separate bus, how he had to make the calculation of whether it made more sense for him to stay on the bus, knowing that if he's on the bus, he could be kicked off the bus at the checkpoint and go to the back of the line, or if it just made sense to just wait on the non-bus part of the checkpoint to get through to make sure that he got here in time, to speak to a bunch of Zionist Jews to try to convince them that Palestinians were human. So after the lecture, I went up to him, I was like, dude, this is fucked up. What is going on here? Why did no one tell me about this? And I was like, can you just I didn't even know what I was like, more, just more, tell me more. He took out his ID card and he's like, yeah, I actually have to head back now because if I'm not back by a certain time, my provisional travel status is going to get revoked and I won't be able to leave Ramallah again. And it doesn't matter if the checkpoints held me up. And the checkpoints could take 3 to 4 hours. So I need to head back now. I'm like, dude, it's 10:30 or 11 o'clock. He's like, I can't take any chances. I'm not risking this getting revoked. So I said to him, I was like, I need to know more. He said, well, why don't you come with me to Ramallah? So I'll tell you, the first thought that rose in my mind, it was rising and it said, if I go, you will kill me. Because that was the way I was conditioned. Growing up, for me, Palestinians were terrorists. There was no possibility that a Palestinian was human, and certainly no possibility that Palestinian resistance had nothing to do with Jewish folks, but had to do with the fact that there were settlers kicking Palestinians off their land, upholding apartheid, ethnic cleansing, and genocide. So as that thought was rising, there was another voice in me, and I think this voice is a deep ancestral voice, and to this day, I'm amazed at myself that I was able to challenge all of my conditioning with a second voice, a deeper voice, a deeper knowing. And that voice immediately said, well, you've been told your whole life that this person was going to kill you and that this person was a terrorist and he wasn't human. And he's standing right in front of you and he's the exact opposite of
It's true, Decadune. It's the same colonialist mentality. I think it's just turned up to its logical extreme endpoint in this situation, but you still have the same thing living in Canada or the United States. Oh, I can't go downtown. I'm going to be mugged or killed. We're all programmed with this kind of colonialist mentality to an extent, but I think Zionist Jews in Israel and in the diaspora are programmed with that, to the absolute extreme.
Of those things. In that moment, I didn't vocalize that thought, and I called bullshit, and I said, yeah, I'll come. I'll come. I need to see it for myself. Now, as a Zionist kid growing up, this was unheard of. The thought that I could go to a Palestinian town and come back in anything less than a body bag was absurd. But he said, you got to come in the next couple of days. So this was Friday. So I had Shabbos in Yerushalayim. And then Sunday is a work day in the Israeli settler colony. So I went to yeshiva. I went to Gemara in the morning. I think we were holding in Kedushin. And then during lunch, I took off my kippah, I put on the hat, and I went to Shar Shechem, which is Damascus Gate. The only place I wasn't allowed to go to when I was in yeshiva, for fear that Palestinians would kill me. And the second I stepped into Damascus Gate, I essentially, I don't want to say became Palestinian, that's ridiculous. I had tremendous privilege as a settler, but I got to taste, maybe instead of a drop in the ocean, I got to taste the mist surrounding one drop in the ocean of what it's like to be subject to a settler colonial regime.
And by the way, Zionists would now call this person an anti-Semite, according to that resolution that's being debated in the House right now. It doesn't look like it's going to pass because it seems like there's some Democrats that are actually coming out to oppose it. But they would call this guy an anti-Semite. That's how totally preposterous it is. I don't roll on Shabbos. It's me neither. An anti-Semite or a self-hating Jew, it means the same thing. It means the same thing.
And I got on a Palestinian bus. And for me, I was like, well, this is interesting that it's a completely different busing system. But even more than that, it's like I, all of a sudden, was with the people who were supposed to kill me.
He hates Israeli freedom.
The very opposite happened, where when I was on a Palestinian bus, all of a sudden, my sense of identity and belonging started to become Palestinian in terms of my sense of where my safety lies. And my sense of threat immediately became, holy shit, I'm on a Palestinian bus. I am being read as Palestinian in a fucking genocidal settler colony. I am about to go through an hour and a half of military checkpoints in knowing that this occupying army can do whatever they want to me, and the only protection I have is an American passport, which is way more than any Palestinian has, and I was still terrified. And I remember the process of just like this image of a Palestinian father being comforted by his daughter. This man's probably 65 years old. And just me just realizing in that moment, like, the deep humiliation that this person had to undergo. And he was someone privileged who was able to leave Ramallah to Jerusalem. And I remember just going through the Columbia checkpoint, IDF soldiers coming on, harassing us. And I remember going into the Columbia checkpoint and being on the inside of the wall and seeing the beautiful graffiti and seeing that there was a graffiti of someone, a kid with a slingshot. And my Jewish brain at the time said, wow, this is amazing. The Quran and the Torah are so similar. They also have an image of King David with a slingshot. And then after that, the bus kept going and the slingshot was pointed at an IDF soldier. And that's when it started to crumble for me, where I said, wait a second, who's who here? Who's David and who's Goliath? These are the same rocks that my ancestors used to resist oppression. And now these rocks of Palestine are being used by Palestinians to resist oppression too. And we have become our worst nightmare. I remember sitting in a bar in Ramallah. Sorry, the Israeli security apparatus. I don't remember who it was. But if you could find him for me, that'd be lovely, because I dearly miss him and he changed my life. I remember sitting in a bar in Ramallah. And this person just explaining to me, this beautiful Palestinian human just explaining to me, being so patient with me, speaking to a Zionist settler, speaking to me and just saying, like, dude, like, most people here have never seen Jerusalem. I'm like, what are you talking about? It's literally right there. It's like you have to be a male and 65 or older, or women 55 or older, or you need to have someone sponsor you for a work permit, but the only way they can sponsor you, there has to be an Israeli, and how the fuck is an Israeli going to sponsor you if they don't even know you exist because you're behind the wall? Again, maybe the regulations have changed. This was my experience 5 years ago. It's probably gotten worse. And I remember him saying to me, he said, Shlomo, what would you do? What would you do if your entire life, the only person of the occupying army that you saw, and the only interaction you ever had with Jews were IDF soldiers who came in and raided you and arrested you in the middle of the night, put you under administrative detention, tear gassed your homes, cut off your water and electricity, arrested a bunch of your friends, and killed you and harassed you? He said, what would you fucking do? And I said, if you don't think that I would resist with every single fiber in my being, as long as I was alive, to liberate myself from this colonial hell? You are out of your fucking mind. I said, how dare you even ask me what I would do? I said, do you know my ancestry? Do you know who I come from? Do you know that my lineage? My grandfather survived Auschwitz, Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, Hanukkah. You think I wouldn't fight back? That was after 6 hours. Can you imagine what 18 years, what 30 years does to the psyche of someone like that? And y'all sit here and get confused with Palestinian resistance? Are you kidding me? All that shows me is that A, you have no idea what the settler colony of Israel is, and B, it's disrespectful. You're disrespecting yourself because you're telling me that if you were in that position, you wouldn't fight back and you would willingly die. And that tells me that if I was in Auschwitz with you and we were in the bunkers, you wouldn't resist our Nazi captors. And that is someone I don't trust. So let's fucking get it together and start telling the truth and take this seriously. Let's fucking free Palestine for all people, everyone on the land.
Jesus, quite the discrepancy in audio levels. Yeah, great point to end on. This apparently is good too. I haven't seen this.
Hamas, but do you condemn Hamas? Boy, did that narrative change since the 7th of October. It took 40 days for people to go, what Hamas did was terrible, to, if I went through what they went through, I too would be a terrorist. I too would also say, enough is enough, fuck you, I want my land back, or fuck you, I'm going to fight back. It took us 45 days of children being murdered to go, if someone killed my child in front of my eyes, or if someone killed my parents when I was young and I had to raise as an orphan, I too would be part of Hamas. Yeah, it took 45 days or however long days it's been. It's been more now. And I almost want to thank Israel for opening our eyes to this, because for 75 years, before the internet, whilst the internet was trying to find its feet, you guys were fucking about. We were fucking about doing whatever you want, no one could see it. But then you decided to use Hamas as an excuse on the 7th, where you attacked your own fucking people because you're vile humans, to then be able to attack Gaza. Basically. So you set all of that up, and by doing that, you showed the whole fucking world that you are pieces of shit. So help me God, if one more person brings up religion and says, oh wait, it's anti-Semitic, no one gives a fuck that you're Jewish. No one gives a fuck. Okay? All I've done in the last 24 hours is see video and photo of a father holding his daughter in his arms and saying goodbye, soul of my soul. That is all I've seen. The more stuff that comes out of Gaza and the West Bank of what Israel are doing, the more angry we're getting. And the best thing about being a millennial and a Gen Z right now, and it makes me so proud to be part of this generation, is that for years and years and years, the older generations were told to trust the government, and the government were able to spin the narrative. But we live in a world where we see physical proof coming outside of what government is saying. And we're not turning around and going, oh, you guys are fucking, we already knew government was scum, now we know you're really scum.
Yeah, they cannot control TikTok, and that's the amazing thing. It's like they claim that there's some like devious, nefarious Chinese algorithm that's turning the youth. They're turning the youth against Israel. And it's like, no, people are just seeing. It's a normal reaction to seeing the nonstop stream of footage of brutal violence that we've been subjected to. And it's a normal human reaction when you see the violence that we're seeing in Gaza over the last 2 months, and then you have the people perpetrating the violence, committing the violence, or the people that support that saying, I'm the victim. I'm being victimized. You're victimizing me. And people are just like, what? Because it doesn't make sense. It's never made sense. But it's so obvious. It's so obvious to everyone now. This whole self-victimization narrative. I mean, just no one is buying this anymore. No one is buying it. Like the fucking Columbia professor guy. The Columbia professor guy. Look at this. Like, this guy's still in the news. Like, what's 60 Minutes even doing putting this motherfucker on TV? The guy who, when Israel's massacring thousands of killed children, held his little pathetic little rally in Columbia University and was like, my child, I have a father. I have a 2-year-old son. I read to him every night. And was like, while actual children were seeing and witnessing actual children being murdered every single day. And this guy's like, my son in like suburban USA, who's like the absolute safest place he could possibly be, my beautiful boy. And suggesting that these like Columbia rallies are like somehow putting his son, his precious, beautiful boy, in danger. And they're still talking to this guy. I drive a Dodge Stratus.
The university just thinks this will just quiet down. But we've been there before. Hatred doesn't disappear.
Shai Davidai is an assistant professor of management at the Columbia Business School
Assistant professor of management at Columbia Business School. Give me a fucking break. That's not a real thing. Get a real job, sir. Go work at fucking McDonald's. That's an actual job contributing to society. Assistant professor. Sir, what is it? Assistant professor of what?
of management at the Columbia Business School.
Assistant professor of management at Columbia Business School. Come on, sir. Fuck you.
Who grew up in Israel. He says he was shocked to his core by the Hamas atrocities on October 7th, and then by what he saw as the university's
He
failure.
really wanted to go viral, dude. That clip is so pathetic. Everyone get out your phones. Get out your phones and film me while I go in this like self-righteous pro-genocide rant and try to force myself to cry. Absolutely embarrassing.
Failure to condemn the perpetrators by name.
Why do you think that is? I think it's a mixture of cowardice, and part of it is callousness.
Davidai's frustration erupted 2 weeks after the attack in a video that went viral.
President Minouche Shafik of Columbia University, you are a coward!
What can the university do at this time?
If you support Hamas,
If you support Hamas, I want to hear, he's going to make a historical analogy in a moment. This brilliant man's going to make a really brilliant historical analogy that he thinks is a real, like, gotcha. He's going to do it in just a moment, and we're going to talk about it.
if you support Hamas, you should not be allowed to be an organization on campus.
Universities, colleges are supposed to be bastions of free speech. Is this not a free speech issue?
So, is a student organization celebrating a lynching of an African American male free speech?
The guy's fucking face. In this analogy, the person that's lynching the African American male is Israel. That's what that that's not what the analogy is. In this analogy, on October 7th, that's like a slave uprising. In Jim Crow America, that's oppressed people of color. The real analogy would be like the Nat Turner.
This is some
slave
guy, Rob
uprising.
Russo, some leftist based in Canada. I was turned on to this sick individual, and I found this.
Zach, thank you so much for the raid. I really appreciate it. You enjoy myself. He says, imagine defending Hamas after they killed 1,200 innocent people in a terrorist attack. If you support Israel, you support terrorism. Simple as. Israel has killed 20,000 people in the last 6 weeks. Do you support that? If you do, you support terrorism. You're a terrorist supporter, sir. You're a terrorist sympathizer. You support thousands and thousands of dead kids. You enjoy myself. Absolutely disgusting. Disgusting, disgraceful person. I'm sorry to the Zach Raiders that had to see that. I apologize. I apologize. Thank you for the raid, Zach. I appreciate it. No, but so this guy's making an analogy. I'll show it one time to the Raiders that just came in.
Supposed to be bastions
You can
of
count on me.
free
You're gonna have
speech.
good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Thank you for the gifted sub, Anon. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Is this not a free speech issue?
So, is a student organization celebrating a lynching of an African American male free speech?
So again, he's using the analogy that October 7th was like an African American male being lynched. Again, in this analogy, the person doing the lynching is Israel. If you want to make an analogy about African Americans and October 7th, it would be the Nat Turner slave uprising. It would be a slave uprising where slave owners and oppressors and colonizers and their families were killed. That's the analogy. The analogy is not Israelis being attacked, including IDF soldiers in an occupation army being killed, are not oppressed African Americans being lynched by the Ku Klux Klan. That does not make sense. It's not true. It's the exact opposite of that analogy. If you want to make an analogy about the treatment of African Americans for October 7th, it's that. It's a slave uprising where the slave owners and the colonizers and even innocent civilians were killed. That's the analogy, if you want to make that. If you want to make that case. Oh, for sure, Sam. He was ready for that one. He had that in his back pocket. He was ready to go. Yeah, look at the face. But still, this guy should not be getting interviews on TV. This is absolutely preposterous. This fucking moron loser being on TV, saying this kind of stuff. Yeah, the guy grew up in Israel and he knows his neighbors hang Arabs. Yeah. Like, what is that if not a lynching? When the IDF just executes unarmed people. That's a lynching. When Palestinians are murdered and beaten and imprisoned for no other reason except because they're on the wrong side of an apartheid state, that's a lynching. And there's one other thing I wanted to look at. And by the way, like, this is what's going on. Look at this, talking about Colombia. Look at this. And then here you see how Twitter's community notes can come to be a form of propaganda themselves, even though sometimes it can be valuable. It says we'll be having our second teach-in this Wednesday. We will discuss the significance of the Palestinian counteroffensive on October 7th. And then the community note says, and this event was canceled, by the way. So this motherfucker got his wish. This event was canceled. And in the community note, it says October 7th was not a counteroffensive. There was a ceasefire in place that Hamas broke on October 7th when it launched thousands of rockets, invading Israel, and committed hundreds of war crimes. The term counteroffensive applies to Israel's response, not the Hamas attack. That's what the community note says. And the evidence of this, the source that's used is the Times of Israel clip about fucking Hillary Clinton. To bring it back to her. That's the evidence that's used in the community note to justify this. Yeah, the ceasefire where, yeah, hey Jordan, what's up? Or excuse me, really chill guy. The ceasefire where they were able to periodically drop bombs on Gaza, which they call mowing the grass, where Shireen Abu Akleh was murdered, where there's constant people being murdered in the West Bank. So to bring it back to her, though. So you see like this efforts on the part of this fucking clown in Colombia to shut down free speech, which is working evidently. And you see the way that like community notes and Twitter in general, especially since Musk visited Israel, seems to have increased its efforts to promote these kinds of narratives using these tools. And I wanted to just look at one more thing here. Just to talk about, there's a ceasefire on October 7th. Or yeah, the history started on October 7th. Or we just got to get rid of Hamas. All this shit. Here's a clip from 1988. This is a news clip from 1988.
Schultz is flying back to Israel to resume his attempt to start the process of negotiation towards a settlement of the Palestinian crisis. He does so in the midst of an uprising by those Palestinians who live under Israeli occupation, an uprising in which so far more than 70 Palestinians have died and many hundreds more have been injured, in a conflict with the Israeli army that has shocked public opinion around the world. The focus of international dismay has been upon the beatings administered to the Palestinians by their Israeli captors. Our report tonight examines the actions and the policies of the Israeli army in its attempt to crush the uprising in the occupied territories. That is the land seized by Israel from its Arab neighbors in the June War of 1967, the Golan Heights, the West Bank, and the Gaza Strip. It is here in the Jabalia refugee camp where the uprising began that Peter Gill begins his report.
A man in a mask challenges Israeli authority over Gaza. This demonstration is illegal. So too is the Palestinian flag. The stones they pick up are now emblems of Palestinian revolt. To Israeli soldiers, those stones are a threat and a provocation. A confrontation in the making. Israeli soldiers are angry.
Leave the place immediately. You understood me? Leave the place. Go. I show you the paper.
Well, can you translate it for us?
I don't understand nothing. Go out of the place.
Surely it's necessary to translate it for us. From a concealed vantage point, we film conduct of which Israel is officially ashamed. A Palestinian teenager has been collared by the army and is frog-marched to the vehicle.
Report follows how Israeli occupation forces beat to death 2 Palestinian teenagers, including a Christian, following Israeli doves Rabin's orders to smash the bones of native Palestinians.
The women of Jabalia refugee camp try to intervene. Behind the trucks there are now 2 Palestinian boys.
Most peaceful Israeli PM, and he was
One of them
assassinated
receives some rough
by his
Israeli
Zionists
justice.
for being too nice and for wanting to have peace. To show how completely out of control this country is.
In January, Defense Minister Yitzhak Rabin announced a strategy of force, power and beatings instead of bullets. The army says beatings can only be used during riots, in hot pursuit, or if arrest is resisted.
Including Netanyahu supported his assassination.
So this beating is illegal.
What has happened, I think, since General Rabin's announcement is that whilst it was always done quietly and not necessarily in a public place, now it is being done in public and very, very openly. And I think it has given, as they say in this part of the world, the green light to people to do things which
Yeah, seriously, Sam, shoot him in the
maybe
leg,
they
Jack.
had been inhibited from doing before.
In the aftermath of demonstrations, casualties start to arrive at the camp's United Nations clinic. This man was beaten and then kicked in the genitals. This man has a fractured forearm. The world knows that when the Israeli army means business, its opponents had better beware. This was left behind in a Palestinian refugee camp when a group of soldiers got involved in a riot. It needs 2 hands to wield, and it's studded with little nails, apparently to prevent splitting. 2 issues immediately arise. The first is simply the extent and severity of the beatings being meted out. The other is whether the Israelis are deliberately exceeding their own instructions and guidelines as to how weapons like this should be used.
If we just get rid of Hamas, then Israel will start being nice, you see.
Gaza's only Roman Catholic Church ministers to a tiny community of 200, but the Palestinian revolt and the Israeli response had their impact here. Elias Tarazi is a hospital cook. He and his wife are still a long way from coming to terms with the death 3 weeks ago of their 3rd son, Khader. At a modest Christmas lunch, the Tarazi family of 4 sons and 3 daughters was still together. Then, on February the 8th, Khader was shopping by bicycle in Gaza town. There'd been trouble and the army was on the lookout for likely troublemakers. Khader was nervous. Khader Tarazi had good reason to be afraid. A Palestinian Arab, 19 years old, the wrong person at the wrong age in occupied Gaza today. He got on his bike and fled at speed from the army down there. Khader knew this part of town well, but the soldiers were by now in pursuit. He abandoned his bike and ran on. He burst into this house and hid under the bed, but he was dragged out.
لقيته عامل هيك وقاعدين بخطوا فيه وحدفوه بالجيب صار يدعس عليه.
And what sort of beating were they giving him?
كيف كانوا يضربوه؟ كيف الطريقة كانوا يضربوه؟ على راسه وهو عامل هيك ومنجرين فيه.
We've established that Khader Tarazi was taken to an Israeli prison camp known as Ansar II. According to other detainees, he was desperately injured, but received next to no medical attention. His family was frantic.
لأنه عارفينه هناك الأنصار برضه مش راضيين يفيدونا. قالوا لنا روحوا على الشرطة يسألوا، روحوا على الإدارة يسألوا، روحوا عند الحاكم يسألوا. وقعدنا نمشي ونروح ونيجي وفيش معنا سيارة واحنا نمشي من مكان للتاني واحنا ندور على الولد ولا حد راضي يفيدنا. يعني رحنا عند الحاكم برضه الحاكم ما ردوش علينا على الباب منعونا نخش.
After 10 hours of semi-consciousness, Khader was transferred to an Israeli hospital. It is still not clear when or where he died. It was certainly a full 48 hours after the...
I don't have time for this whole segment, I don't think. But I'm going to link... This is, first of all, Rafat in Gaza is someone that everyone should be following. And I will link this thread here in the chat if you want to watch the whole segment. I think it's really, like, instructive, right? Because we want to pretend that history began on October 7th, that nothing before that matters. And it's like, when you understand, like the previous video that we were looking at, when you understand what it's like to live in this context for decades, you know, not years, not months, not years, decades, 75 years. It's really not hard to understand why people resist and why people join whatever options are available to them to resist the oppression, the apartheid, the violence. That's the violence of settler colonialism. You know, it's completely understandable. I've got to get going soon, folks. I have to go in about 10 minutes to pick my kid up from school. If you can, before I go, please subscribe to TRRS. I'm a mere 26 subs away to the goal, so it's totally within reach. It's totally reachable. A mere measly 26 subs to go. If you enjoy this program, if you enjoy tuning in every day, if you like being part of the community or being a viewer or listener or chatter or what have you, please subscribe if you can. As you know, as I often remind you, and I apologize for that, but as I often remind you, I must make the line go up. I must make the little number go up every single day that I do this program. So if possible, please do subscribe to TRRS. You can subscribe, you can gift subscriptions, you can rise all the way to the elite tier of the friendship triangle system. That's Twitch's only two-dimensional triangle-shaped friendship access and trickle-down clout tiered reward system. And I appreciate it a lot. It supports the work that I do on here. It helps me keep doing this show each and every day. And we become friends. We become friends afterwards. What's wrong with that? That doesn't sound so bad, does it? Yeah, I mean, the woman being killed by the bulldozer, 20 years ago now. I mean, it's such an example of like the way that Israel is able to flagrantly violate whatever rules or norms. Like they kill innocent, unarmed American women. Like we're being asked to support women right now and believe women. And when Israel kills female activists, unarmed female activists, America does nothing. There's no response. There's no consequences. There's no anything. It's a real disgrace. They trot some ghoul on TV to pretend to apologize, but they never do actually care. Yeah, and you get some hand-wringing pseudo-condemnations. We expect there'll be a full investigation. Like that's what happened with Shireen Abu Akleh a couple months ago. We're very concerned. We're gonna investigate this. And then sometimes the investigation happens, sometimes it doesn't even happen at all. But regardless, there's no actual consequence. No matter what the crime is. And right now, the crimes that we're seeing are some of the most egregious crimes that we've ever seen in modern history. We're looking into this. That's right. It's the Elon Musk approach. Well, folks, thanks so much for the support that's come in so far. Very much appreciated. And now, thanks to your generous support, now very happy to report that we're only now 26 subs away from the goal. So we're making some real progress here. What does David Frum think about it? I mean, David Frum's out there promoting this narrative about swarthy rapist hordes to justify the violence.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Same old stuff. SWTP2T. I don't know how to say that. Thank you for the gifted sub. I appreciate it.
We simply use the computer to mark up the size of the account.
TRRS shocked, TRRS shocked, TRRS shocked. Many people are calling the trickle-down clout network the highway to the friend zone, and much better than other networks, such as neural networks. TRRS libface, TRRS MRX unelect debuting.
Thank you very much, Matt, for the 200 bits. I appreciate it. And that's interesting tidbit there, Marty. I'm going to be looking forward to checking that out totally legally. Very much appreciated, man. Great. And now look, only 25 subs to go. Only 25 subs to go. Remarkable. We're making a lot of progress here. You know, going on 3 hours, 12 minutes. Remember, folks, it's the only way that I'm able to continue doing this program. It's the only way. I must do everything I can to make the line go up, to make the little number go up. If you can. If you tune into this program and you enjoy watching it, and you enjoy being part of the community, please subscribe. It's very, very helpful. Every little bit helps. Why am I so exhausted? Struggling a little bit today, aren't I?
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship Triangle.
There we go. Look at that. Wonderful. Just when I was about to give up hope.
You've just become an elite member of the Friendship
Just when I was
Triangle.
about to give up hope, the wonderful people in this community, including Sam, who's my actual friend in real life now.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Just when I'm about to give up hope. Sam, thank you so much, aka Fonzonzons. Thanks for the 5 gifted subs. Thank you, Geek Greg, for not only for paying forward your gift sub with a 5 gift sub. Very, very kind of you. Thank you, Geek Greg, as well, and thank you, Diego, as well, for the gifted sub. Very, very much appreciated. I was just about to just quit. I was just about to quit this whole damn thing. And once again, this wonderful community comes through to support the work that I'm doing on here and forcing me to continue coming back. Almost against my wishes now. I'm almost being held captive, really, when you really break it down.
You can count on me. You're gonna have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
$4.10. Thank you for a gifted sub as well. I really appreciate that $4 can. $4.10. Not $4 can. Thank you for that. I appreciate that. And now only 13 subs to go, folks. Only 13 subs to go. Crazy. Let me find someone to rate because I can't stay too much longer. I can't do the thing where I say I'm going to go and then I don't. I really can't afford to do that today. $4.10 is a good deal for Cheeto cosplay. There we go. Absolutely. What are we doing here? We do have a hype train as well, folks. We're 13 subs away from the goal and 70% of the way through level 3 of this hype train. So we could keep this hype train going. A few more gifted subs could do it. And then we all get the cool hype train emotes. What's not to love about that? I don't know. I don't know, honestly. It seems like a win-win-win for everybody. gonna go. We're rating David Tavares. I'm gonna get going. Still another minute though, folks. Still one more minute to support this program. Still, we could still do it in theory. In theory, we could still get to the number. We could get to the good number in theory.
You can count on me. You're going to have good old Rob to talk you through all this.
Diego, thank you so much for another gifted sub. I really appreciate you, Diego. Thank you. Well, I hope everyone enjoyed the stream today. I'll be back tomorrow, as always. I'll see you then, okay? Thanks again, everybody.